stream. I am 3 minutes late. But that's fine. Okay, that is all going good. I forgot to check my audio. Wait, one second. Okay, it's gone. I just want to make sure it was good. I completely forgot to do that. But we are all ready to read. We had the chapstick. We have the water. It does have ice in it though, because I was using it with my stream earlier. That's all fine though. Then I have some chai also for my tea. It's my first try actually. I've never tried it yet. I think it's way too hot though. That smells amazing though. Okay. And we can get right into the reading. Yes. We are doing chapters 6 through 8. We will be doing May chapter 9. It just depends on how chaotic it is tonight, because typically the streams get very chaotic and can derail sometimes. So let's get right into it. Let me get a drink of water before. Okay, chapter 6. Guys, actually, I've been told my audio is kind of weird when I read, so I'm going to make sure my mic is right next to my face. Okay. Chapter 6. I suppose you have heard the news, Basil, said Lord Henry that evening as Hallward was shown into a little private room at the Bristol where dinner had been laid out for 3. No, Harry, announced the artist, giving his hat and coat to the bowing waiter. What is it? Nothing about politics, I hope. They don't interest me. There's hardly a single person in the House of Commons worth painting, though many of them would be the better for a little whitewashing. Dorian Gray is engaged to be married, said Lord Henry, watching him as he spoke. Hallward started, then frowned. Dorian engaged to be married? He cried. Impossible! It is perfectly true. To whom? To some little actress. Throat just like, nope. Some little actress or other. I can't believe it. Dorian is far too sensible. Dorian is far too wise not to do foolish things now and then, my dear Basil. Marriage is hardly a thing that one can do now and then, Harry. Except in America, rejoined Lord Henry languidly. But I didn't say he was married. I said he was engaged to be married. There's a great difference. I have a distinct remembrance of being married, but I have no recollection of all being engaged. I am inclined to think that I never was engaged, but think of Dorian's birth and position and wealth. It would be absurd for him to be married to much beneath him. If you want to make him marry this girl, tell him that. If you want to make him marry this girl, then tell him that, Basil. He is sure to do it, then. Whatever a man does, a thoroughly stupid thing, is always from the noblest motives. I hope the girl is good, Harry. I don't want to see Dorian tied to some vile creature who might degrade his nature and ruin his intellect. Oh, she is better than good. She is beautiful, murmured Lord Henry, sipping a glass of vermouth and orange bitters. Dorian says she's beautiful, and he is not often wrong about things of that kind. Your portrait of him has quickened his appreciation of the personal appearance of other people. It had the excellent effect, among others. We are to see her tonight, if that boy doesn't forget his appointment. Are you serious? Quite serious, Basil. I should be miserable if I thought I should ever be serious than I am at the present moment. But do you approve of it, Harry? Asked the painter, walking up and down the room and biting his lip. You can't approve of it, possibly it's some silly infatuation. I never approve or disapprove of anything now. It is an absurd attitude to take towards life. We are not sent into this world to air our mortal prejudices. I never take any notice of what common people say. I never interfere with what charming people do. If a personality fascinates me, whatever mode of expression that personality selects, it is absolutely delightful to me. Dorian Gray falls in love with a beautiful girl who acts Juliet and proposes to marry her. Why not? If he wedded Mezzalani, just okay, for context, Mesalania is a scandalously unfaithful and cleverly calculating young wife of Roman Emperor Claudius, executed subsequently for plotting against her husband. So, he would be none the less interesting. You know, I am not a champion of marriage. The real drawback of marriage is that it makes one unselfish, and unselfish people are colorless. They lack individuality. Still, there are certain temperaments that marriage makes more complex. They retain their egotism and add in so many other egos. They are forced to have more than one life. They become highly organized, and to be highly organized is, I should fancy, the object of a man's existence. Besides, every experience is of value, and whatever one may say against marriage, it is certainly an experience. I hope that Dorian Gray will make this girl his wife, passionately adore her for 6 months, and then suddenly become fascinated with someone else. He would be a wonderful study. You don't mean a single word of that, Harry. You know you don't. If Dorian Gray's life were spoiled, no one would be sorrier than yourself. You are much better than you pretend to be. Lord Henry laughs. The reason we all like to think that so well of others is that we are all afraid of ourselves. The basis of optimism is sheer terror, to think that we are generous because we credit our neighbors with the possession of other virtues that are likely to benefit us. We praise the banker that we may overdraw our accounts. We find good qualifications for the highwayman, in the hopes that we may spare us our pockets. I mean, everything that I have said, I have the greatest contempt for optimism. As for a spoiled life, no life is spoiled but one whose growth is arrested. If you want to mar nature, you have merely to reform it. As for marriage, of course, that would be silly. But there are others and more interesting bonds between a man and woman. I will certainly encourage them, so they have the charm of some fashionable, but here in Dorian himself, he will tell you more than I can. My dear Basil, my dear Basil, you must both congratulate me, said the lad, throwing off his evening cape with the satin-lined wings, and shaking each of his friends in the hand in turn. I have never been so happy. Of course it is sudden. All really delightful things are, and yet it seems to me to be the one thing I was looking for all my life. He was flushed with excitement and pleasure, and looking extraordinarily handsome. I hope you will always be very happy, Dorian, said Hallward, but I don't quite forgive you for not letting me know of your engagement. You let Henry know. No. And I don't forgive you for being late for dinner, broke in Lord Henry, putting his hand on the lad's shoulder and smiling as he spoke. Come, let us sit down and try what our new chef here is like, and we will tell you how it all came about. I am back. Yes, I am. We are reading the Picture of Dorian Gray. I may or may not have woken up at 4 p.m. today, so we are going to be pulling an all-nighter. So you might see, actually you probably won't, because you'll probably be sleeping. But, I am going to possibly do a 4 or 5 a.m. stream of Hot 76. Not 100% sure, but we might be, because I need to fill in the time, because I haven't even been up for 12 hours. I have been up since 4 p.m. because my alarm never went off, and for some reason I was like, I didn't even look at the time. I woke up, and for like 2 seconds, when my dog jumped on my bed, I'm like, okay, well, you're here, so I want to go back to sleep, because he was laying on my blankets, and he's like, I don't want to move you, so I just went back to sleep, not realizing what time it was. I think it was like 10 a.m. or something, so I went to sleep, and then woke up at like 4 p.m. Yeah. I feel like 4 p.m. is late enough that I can pull an all-nighter without horrible side effects. I think. Because I feel like if I woke up at like 1 p.m., I feel like I would be pretty tired, but I feel like 4 p.m. is late enough that I feel like I can pull it on later. And the baby is not here, so so I feel like I don't have anything to do tomorrow. I can be productive tonight. I can I can excuse it if I am editing videos or doing something stream related. Yeah. Yes, we'll do a water break. I tried, I think my tea, it is actually chai, actually. It's my first time trying it. Hopefully it's good. That's actually really good. Okay, let's see. Where do we leave off? There really is not much to tell, cried Dorian as he took their seats at the small round table. What happened was simply this. After I left you yesterday evening, Harry, I dressed, had some dinner in that little Italian restaurant in Rupert Street you introduced me to, and went down at 8 o'clock in the theater. Sybil was playing Rosalind, of course. The scenery was dreadful, and the Orlando absurd. But, Sybil, you should have seen her. When she came out in her boy's clothes, they were perfectly wonderful. She was perfectly wonderful. She wore a moss-colored velvet jerkin, with cinnamon sleeves, slim brown cross-gartered hose, a dainty little green cap with a hawk's feather caught in a jewel, and a hooded cloak lined with dull red. I don't know why I said green. She had never seemed to me more exquisite. She had all the delicate grace of a Tangangra figure, Tangangra figure is a small statue of red clay found in the tombs near the ancient city of Tangara, in Boeotia, which is in central Greece. She had all the delicate grace of that Tangira figure that you have in her studio. Basil, her hair clustered around her face like dark leaves around a pale rose. As for her acting, well, you shall see her tonight. She is simply a born artist. I sat in a dingy box, absolutely enthralled. I forgot that I was in London in the 19th century. I was away with my love in a forest that no one man had ever seen. Having the performance was over, I went behind and spoke to her, as if we were sitting together. Suddenly there came into her eyes a look that I have never seen before. My lips moved towards her and we kissed each other. I can't describe to you what I felt at that moment. It seemed to me that all my life had been narrowed to one perfect point of rose-colored joy. She trembled all over and shook like a white narcissus, and she flung herself on her knees and kissed my hands. Then I feel that I should not tell you this, but I can't help it. Of course, our engagement is a dead secret. She had not even told her own mother. I don't know what my guardians would say. Lord Radley is sure to be furious. I don't care. I shall be of age in less than a year, and then I can do what I like. I have been right, Basil, haven't I, to take my love out of poetry and find a wife in Shakespeare's play? Lips that Shakespeare taught to speak have whispered their secrets in my ears. I have the arms of Rosalind around me, and I kiss Juliet on the mouth. Yes, Dorian, I suppose you are right, said Hallward slowly. Have you seen her today? Said Lord Henry. Dorian Gray shook his head. I left her in the forest of Arden. I shall find her in an orchard of Verona. Lord Henry sipped his champagne in a meditative manner. At what particular point did you mention the word marriage, Dorian? What did she say in answer? Perhaps you all forgot about it. My dear Henry, I do not treat it as a business transaction. I did not make any formal proposals. I told her that I loved her, and she said that she is not worthy to be my wife. Not worthy? Why, the whole world is nothing to me compared to her. Women are wonderfully practical, murmured Lord Henry. Much more practical than we are. In situations like that we often forget to say anything about marriage. And they always remind us. Hallward laid his hands upon his arms. Harry, don't tarry. You have annoyed Dorian. He is not like other men. He would never bring misery upon anyone. His nature is far too fine for that. Lord Henry looked across the table. Dorian is never annoyed with me, he answered. I asked the question for the best reason possible. For the reason, indeed, that excuses one for asking any question, simply curiosity. I have a theory that it's always the woman who proposed to us, and not we who propose to the woman, except of course in middle-class life. Then the middle class are not modern. This stream is very, quiet. I wonder where Curly is, or anyone else, because normally it's very not quiet. Then he's not really feeling good though. Dorian Gray laughed and tossed his head. "You're quite incorrigible, Harry, but I don't mind. It is impossible to be angry with you. When you see Sybil Vane, you will feel that the man who would wrong her would be a beast without a heart. I cannot understand how anyone can wish to shame the things he loves. I love Sybil Vane. I want to place her on a pedestal of gold and to see the world worship the woman who is mine. What is marriage? An irrevocable vow. You mock me for that. Ah, don't mock me. It is an irrevocable vow that I want to take. Her trust makes me unfaithful. Her belief makes me good. When I am with her, I regret all that you have taught me. I become different from when you have known me to be. I am changed, and the mere touch of Sybil Vane's hands made me forget that you all are wrong. That you all are wrong, fascinating, poisonous, dreadful theorists. And those who are," asked Lord Henry, helping himself to some salad. "Oh, your theories about life, your theories about love, your theories about pleasure, all your theories, in fact, Harry. Pleasure is the one thing worth having a theory about," he answered in a slow, melodious voice. "But I am not afraid. I cannot claim my theory as my own. It belongs to nature, not to me. Pleasure in nature tests her sign of approval. When we are happy, we are always good. When we are good, we are not always happy." "Ah, then what do you mean by good?" cried Basil Hallward. "Yes," echoed Dorian, leaning back in his chair and looking at Lord Henry over the heavy clusters of purple-lipped irises that stood in the center of the table. What do you mean by good, Harry? To be good is be in harmony with oneself," he replied, touching the thin stem of his glass with his pale, fine-pointed fingers. Discord is to be forced into harmony with others. One's own life, that is the important thing. As for the lives of one's neighbors, if one wishes to be a prig or a Puritan, one can flaunt one's moral views about them, and they are not one's concern. Besides, individualism has really the highest aim. Modern morality consists in accepting the standard of one's age. I consider that for any man of culture to accept the standard of his age and to form the grossest immortality. But surely, if one lives merely for oneself, Harry, one pays terrible price for doing so," suggests the painter. "Yes, we are overcharged for everything nowadays. I should fancy that the real tragedy of the poor is that they can afford nothing but self-denial. Beautiful sins, like beautiful things, are the privilege of the rich. One has to pay in other ways but money." "What sort of ways, Basil?" Oh, I should fancy in remorse and suffering and, well, in the consciousness of degradation." Lord Henry shrugged his shoulders. A dear fellow. Medieval arts is charming, but medieval emotions are out of date. One can use them in fiction, of course, but the only things they can use in fiction are the things that one has ceased to use in fact. Believe me, no civilized man ever regrets a pleasure, and no uncivilized man knows what a pleasure is. "I know what pleasure is," cried Dorian Gray. "It is to adore someone." "That is certainly better than being adored," he answered, toying with some fruit. "Being adored is a nuisance. When treated as just as humanity treats its gods, they worship us, and are always bothering us to do something for them. I should have said that whatever they ask for us first is to give in us. murmured the lad gravely. They create love in our nature, they have the right to demand it back. That is quite true, Dorian, cried Hallward. Nothing is ever quite true, said Lord Henry. That is, interrupted Dorian. You must admit, Harry, the women give to men the very good gold of their lives. Possibly, he sighed, but they invariably want it back such very small change. That is the worry. Women, in some witty Frenchman once put it, inspire us with the desire to do masterpieces and always prevent us from carrying them out. Harry, you are dreadful. I don't know why I like you so much. You will always like me, Dorian, he replied. Will you have some coffee, you fellows? Waiter, bring coffee and fine champagne. And some cigarettes. No, don't mind the cigarettes. I have some. Basil, I can't allow you to smoke cigars. You must have a cigarette. A cigarette is a perfect type of perfect pleasure. It is exquisite and leaves one unsatisfied. What more can you want? Yes, Dorian, you will always be fond of me. I represent to you all the sins you have never had the courage to commit. What nonsense you talk, Harry, cried the lad, taking a light from the fire-breathing silver dragon that the waiter had placed on the table. Let us go to the theatre. When Sybil comes on the stage, she will have a new ideal of life. She will represent something to you that you have never known. I have known everything, said Lord Henry, with a tired look in his eyes, but I am always ready for a new emotion. I am afraid, however, that for me, at any rate, there is no such thing. Still, your wonderful girl may thrill me. I love acting. It is so much more real than life. Let us go, Dorian. You will come with me. I'm so sorry, Basil. There's only room for 2 of us in the Burham. You must follow us in the hansom. They got up and put on their coats, sipping their coffee, standing. The painter was silent and preoccupied. There was a gloom over him. He could not bear this marriage, and yet it seemed to him to be better than maybe other things that might have happened. After a few minutes, they all passed downstairs. He drove off by himself, as they had arranged, and watched the flashing lights in the little brougham in front of him. A strange sense of loss came over him. He felt that Dorian Gray would never again be to him all that he had been in the past. Life had come between them. His eyes darkened, and the crowded, flaring streets became blurred to his eyes. When the cab drew up to the theatre, it seemed to him that he had grown years older. Chapter 7. For some reason or other, the house was crowded that night, and the fat person manager who met them on the door was beaming from ear to ear with an oily, tremulous smile. He escorted them to their box with a sort of pompous humility, waving his fat, jeweled hands and talking at the top of his voice. Dorian Gray loathed him for more than ever. He felt as if he had come to look for Miranda, had been met by Caliban. Lord Henry, upon the other hand, rather liked him. At least he declared he did. He insisted on shaking him in the hand, and assured him that he was proud to meet the man who had discovered a real genius and gone bankrupt over a poet. Hallward amused himself by watching the faces of the pits. The heat was terribly oppressive. In a huge sunlight flamed like a monstrous dahlia, with petals of yellow fire. The youth in the gallery had taken off their coats and waistcoats, and hung them over the side. They talked to each other across the theatre, and shared their oranges with the tawdry girls who sat beside them. Some women were laughing in the pits. Their voices were horribly shrill and discordant. The sound of the popping of corks came from the bar. What a place to find one's divinity in. said Lord Henry. Yes, answered Dorian Gray. It was here I found her, and she is divine above all living things. When she acts, you will never forget everything. Those common, rough people, and their coarse faces and brutal gestures, became quite different. When she was on the stage, they sit silently and watched her. I skipped my face. Okay, I found it. They weep and laugh as she wills them to do. She makes them as responsive as a violin. She spiritualizes them. One feels as if they are the same flesh and blood as oneself. The same flesh and blood as oneself? Oh, I hope not, exclaimed Lord Henry, who was scanning the occupants of the gallery through his opera glasses. Don't pay any attention to him, Dorian, said the painter. I understand what you mean, and I believe in the girl. Anyone you love must be marvelous, and any girl that has this effect that you describe must be as fine and noble. To spiritualize one's age, that is something worth doing. If a girl can give a soul to those who have lived without one, if she can create the sense of beauty in people those lives that have been sordid and ugly, if she can strip them of their selfishness and lend them tears of sorrow that are not their own, she is worthy of your adoration, worthy of the adoration of the world. This marriage is quite right. I did not think it at first, but I admit it now that God's made Sybil vain for you. Without her, he would have been incomplete. Thanks, Basil, answered Dorian Gray, pressing his hands. I knew that you would understand me, Harry. It's so cynical. He terrifies me. But here is the orchestra. It was quite dreadful, but it only lasts for like 5 minutes. For about 5 minutes. Then the curtain rises, and you will see the girl of whom I am going to give all my life, to whom I am giving everything that is good to me. We are reading 3 chapters, so chapter 6, 7, and 8. Maybe chapter 9, depending on how this goes. It's actually reading really quickly because the channel points are not being abused today, so I might read chapter 9, depending on how the rest of this goes. But at this rate, we'll be done reading 3 chapters by an hour and 30 minutes. So, yeah. I'm probably reading 4 chapters tonight. And we are 6 followers away from our goal of 100. We're going to try to reach that this week. We're going to leave off. A quarter of an hour afterwards, amidst an extraordinary turmoil of applause, Sybil Vane stepped onto the stage. Yes, she was certainly lovely to look at. One of the loveliest creatures, Lord Harry thought, that he had seen. There was something of the fawn in her shy grace and startled eyes, a faint blush like the shadow of a rose in a mirror of silver came to her cheeks as she glanced in the crowd of enthusiastic house. She stepped back in a few places. Her lips seemed to tremble. Basil Hallward leaped onto his feet and began to applaud, motionless, as if one was in a dream. Sat Dorian Gray gazing at her. Lord Henry peered through his glasses, murmuring, "Charming, charming." The scene that the hall of Capulet's house, and Romeo in his pilgrim's dress had entered with Mercutio and his friends. The band, as such it was, struck up a few bars of music, and the dance began. Through the crowd was ungainly, shabbily dressed actors. Sybil Vane moved like a creature from a finer world. Her body swayed while she danced as a plant sways in the water. The curves of her throat were the curves of a water lily. Her hands seemed to be made of cool ivory. Yet she was curiously listless. She showed no sign of joy when her eyes rested on Romeo. A few words she had to speak. Good pilgrims, you do wrong your hands too much, which mannerly devotion shows to this. For saints have hands that pilgrims' hands do touch, and palm to palm is holy palmer's kiss. From the brief dialogue that followed, were spoken in a thoroughly artificial manner. The voices were exquisite. From the point of view of tone, it was absolutely false. It was wrong in color. It took away all the life from the verse. It made the passion unreal. Dorian grew pale as he watched her. He was puzzled and anxious. Neither of his friends dared to say anything to him. She seemed to them as absolutely incompetent. They were horribly disappointed. Yet that felt the true test of any Juliets on the balcony scene in the second act. They waited for that. If she failed there was nothing to end her. She looked charming as she came to the moonlight. That could not be denied, but the stagliness of her acting was unbearable. And grew worse as she went on. Her gestures became absurdly artificial. She overemphasized everything that she had to say. The beautiful passage, "Thou knowest the mask of night is on the face of my face, else would a maiden blush bepainted my cheeks, for which thou hast heard me speak tonight," was exclaimed with the painful precision of a schoolgirl who had been taught to recite some second-rate professor of elocution. When she leaned over the balcony and came into the wonderful lines, "Although I joy in thee, I have no joy in this contract tonight. It's too rash, too unadvised, too sudden, too like the lighting which doth cease to be air. Can one say, it lightens too sweet good night? This bud of love, by summer's ripening breath, may prove a bounteous flower when we next meet." She spoke the words as though they conveyed no meaning to her. It was not nervousness, indeed, so far from being nervous. She was absolutely self-contained. It was simply bad art. She was a complete failure. Even the common uneducated audience in the pit of a gallery lost their interest in the play. They got restless and began to talk loudly and to whistle. The manager, who was standing in the back of the dress circle, stamped and swore with rage. The only person unmoved was the girl herself. When the second act was over, there came a storm of hisses, and Lord Henry got up from his chair and put on his coat. "She is quite beautiful, Dorian," she said, "but she can't act, so let us go." "I'm going to see the play through," answered the lad, in a bitter voice. "I'm awfully sorry that I have made you waste an evening, Harry. I apologize to you both. "My dear Dorian, I should think Miss Vane was ill," interrupted Hallward. "We might come to see her some other night. I wish she was ill," he rejoined, "but she seems to me to be simply callous and cold. She is entirely altered. Last night she was a great artist, and this evening she is merely a commonplace, mediocre actress." Don't talk like that about anyone you love, Dorian. Love is a most wonderful thing than art. "They are both simply forms of imitation," remarked Lord Henry. "But do let us go, Dorian. You must not stay here any longer. It is not good for one's morals to see bad acting. Besides, I don't suppose you will want your wife to act. So what does it matter if she plays Juliet like a wooden doll? She is very lovely, and if she knows as little about life as she does about acting, she will be a delightful experience. There's only two kinds of people who are really fascinating: people who know absolutely nothing, and people who know absolutely nothing. People who know absolutely everything, and people who know absolutely nothing." "Good heavens, my dear boy, don't look so tragic. The secret of remaining young is never to have any emotion that is unbecoming. Come to the Club of Basil and myself. We will smoke cigarettes and drink to the beauty of Sybil Vane. She is beautiful. What more can you want?" "Go away, Harry. cried the lad. I want to be alone. Basil, you must go. Ah, can't you see that my heart is breaking? The hot tears came to his eyes. His lips trembled, and rushing to the back of the box, he leaned up against the wall, hiding his face in his hands. Let us go, Basil, said Lord Henry with a strange tenderness in his voice, and the two young men passed out together. A few moments afterwards, the footlights flared up, and in the curtain rose from the third act. Dorian Gray went back to his seat. He looked pale and proud and indifferent. The play dragged on and seemed indeterminate. Half the audience went out, tramping their heavy boots and laughing. The whole thing was a fiasco. The last act was played to almost empty benches. The curtain went out down in a titter and some groans. As soon as it was over, Dorian Gray rushed behind the scenes into the green's room. The girl was standing there alone with a look of triumph on her face. Her eyes was lit with exquisite fire. There was a radiance about her. Oh no! Well, work stuff is important. Her eyes were lit with exquisite fire. There's a radiance about her. Okay, I appreciate it. He parted lips with smiling over some seeker of her own. When he entered, she looked at him with an expression of infinite joy came over her. How badly I acting tonight, Dorian, she cried. Horribly, he answered, gazing at her in amazement. Horribly. It was dreadful. Are you ill? I have no idea what it was. You have no idea what I suffered. The girl smiled. Dorian, she answered, lingering over his name with a long-drawn music in her voice. As though it was sweeter than honey in the rose petals in her mouth. Dorian, you should have understood. But you understand now, don't you? Understand what? He asked angrily. Why I was bad tonight. Why I shall always be bad. Why I shall never act well again. He shrugged his shoulders. Are you ill, I suppose? When you are ill, you shouldn't act. You make yourself ridiculous. My friends were bored. I was bored. She seemed not to listen to him. She was transfigured with joy. An ecstasy of happiness dominated her. Dorian, Dorian, she cried. Before I knew you, acting was the one reality of my life. It was only a theater that I lived. I thought it was all true. I was Rosalind one night, Portia in the other. The joy of Beatrice was my joy. The sorrows of Cordelia's were mine also. I believed in everything. The common people who acted with me seemed to be godlike. They painted scenes were my world. I knew nothing but shadows, and I thought them real. You came, oh, my beautiful love, and you freed my soul from the prison. You taught me what reality really is. Tonight, for the first time in my life, I saw through the hollowness, the sham, the silliness of the empty pageant in which I had always played. Tonight, for the first time, I became conscious that the Romeo was hideous, old and painted, and the moonlight of the orchard was false, and the scenery was vulgar, and what the words I had to speak were unreal, were not my words, and what I wanted to say. It had brought me something higher, something of which all art is but a reflection. It had made me understand what love really is. My love, Prince Charming, Prince of Life, I have grown sick of shadows. You are more to me than art can ever be. What have I to do with the puppets of a play? When I came on tonight, I could not understand how it was everything had gone from me. I thought I was going to be wonderful. I found that I could do nothing. Suddenly it dawned on my soul what it all meant. The knowledge was exquisite to me. I heard them hissing, and I smiled when I could do nothing of love such as ours. Take me away, Dorian. Take me away with you, where we can be quite alone. I hate the stage. I might mimic a passion that I do not feel, but I cannot mimic that one burns me like fire. Oh, Dorian, you understand what it signifies, even though I couldn't do it. It would be profanation for me to play along at being in love. You have made me see that. He flung himself down on the sofa and turned away his face. You have killed my love, he muttered. She looked at him in wonder and laughed. He made no answer. She came across to him, with her little fingers stroking his hair. She knelt down and pressed his hands to her lips. He drew them away, and a shudder ran through him. Then he leaped up and went to the door. Yes, he cried, you have killed my love. You used to stir my imagination, now you don't even stir my curiosity. You simply produce no effect. I loved you because you were marvelous, because you have genius and intellect, because you realized the dreams of great poets, and gave shape to substance of the shadows of art. You have thrown it all away. You are shallow and stupid. My God, how mad I was in love with you. What a fool I have been. You are nothing to me now. I will never see you again. I will never think of you. I will never mention your name. You don't know what you were to me. You don't know what you were to me once. Why once? Oh, I can't bear to think of it. I wish I had never laid eyes upon you. You have spoiled the romance of my life. How little you can know of love. If you say it mars your art, without your art you are nothing. I would have made you famous, splendid, magnificent. The world would have worshipped you. You would have borne my name. What you are now, a third-rate actress with a pretty face. The girl grew white and trembled as she clenched her hands together, and her voice seemed to catch in her throat. You are not serious, Dorian, she muttered. You are acting. Acting? I leave that to you. And you do it so well, he answered bitterly. She rose from her knees and, with a piteous expression of pain on her face, came across the room to him. She put her hands upon his arms and looked into his eyes. He thrust her back. Don't touch me, he cried. A low moan broke from her, and she flung herself at his feet and lay there like a trampled flower. Dorian, don't leave me, she whispered. I am sorry, I didn't act well. I was thinking of you all that time. But I will try, indeed. I will try. It came to me so suddenly across me, my love for you. I think I should never have known it if you had not kissed me. If we had not kissed each other, kiss me again, my love. Don't go away from me. I couldn't bear it. Oh, don't go away from me. My brother, no, never mind. Don't mean it. He was in a jest. But you, oh, can't you forgive me for tonight? I will work so hard and try to improve. Don't be cruel to me, because I love you better than anything in the world. After all, it is but only once that I have not pleased you. But you are quite right, Dorian. I should have known myself more of an artist. That was foolish of me, and yet I couldn't help it. Oh, don't leave me. A fit of passion sob choked her. She crouched on the floor, looked down at her, and her chiseled lips curled in exquisite disdain. There is always something ridiculous about the emotion of people whom one has ceased to love. Sybil Vane seemed to him to be absurdly melodramatic. Her tears and sobs annoyed him. I am going, he said, in the last of his calm, clear voice. I don't wish to be unkind. I can't see you again. You have disappointed me. She wept silently and made no answer, but crept nearer, her little hands stretched blindly out and appeared to be seeking for him. He turned her on his heels and left the room. In a few moments he was out of the theater. Where he went to, he hardly knew. He remembered wandering through dimly lit streets, past gaunt, black shadows of archways and evil-looking houses. Women with hoarse voices and harsh laughter had called after him. Drunkards had reeled by, cursing and chattering to themselves like monstrous apes. They had seen grotesque children huddled upon doorsteps and heard shrieking in loaves of blooming courts. As the dawn was just breaking, he found himself close to Covent Garden. The darkness lifted, and flushed with faint fires, the sky hollowed itself into a perfect pearl. Huge carts filled with nodding lilies were grumbled slowly down the polished, empty street. The air was heavy with the perfume of the flowers, and their beauty seemed to bring him in Adodine for his pain. He followed into the market and watched the men unloading their wagons. A white-smocked carter offered him some cherries. He thanked him, wondered why he refused to accept any money for them, and began to eat them listlessly. They had been plucked at midnight, and the coldness of the moon had entered into them. A long line of boys carrying crates of stripped tulips and of yellow and red roses defiled in front of him, treading their way through huge jade-green piles of vegetables under the portico with those gray sun-bleached pillars. Loitering a troop of dragon bareheaded girls, waiting for the auction to be over. Others crowded around with swinging doors at the coffee house or in the pizza pizzette. I don't know why I cannot say that. The heavy cart horses slipped and trampled upon the rough stones, shaking the bells and trappings. Some of the drivers were lying asleep on a pile of sacks, iris-necked and pink-footed. The pigeons ran about picking up seeds. After a little while, he hauled a hansom and drove home. For a few moments he loitered upon the doorsteps, looking round at the silent square with its blank, closed-shuttered windows and its staring blinds. The sky was pure opal now, and the roofs of the houses glistened like silver against it. For some chimney opposite a thin wreath of smoke and rising, it curled a violet ribbon through the nacer-colored air. And the huge gilt Venetian lantern, spoiled by some Doge barg, that hung from the ceiling of the great oak-paneling hall of entrances. The lights were still burning from 3 flickering jets, thin blue petals of flame they seemed, rimmed with some white fire. He turned them out and, having thrown his hat and cape on the table, passed through the library towards the door of his bedroom. A large octagonal chamber on the ground floor that, in his newborn feeling of luxury, he had just decorated for him and hung some curious Renaissance tapestries stored in a disused attic at Selby Royal. As he was turning the handle of the door, his eyes fell upon the portrait Basil Hallward had painted of him. He stared back at it in surprise. Then he went on his own room, looked somewhat puzzled, after he had taken the buttonhole out of his coat. He seemed to hesitate, finally came back, went over the picture and examined it. In the dim iridescent light that struggled through the cream-colored silk blinds, a face appeared to him to have a little changed. The expression looked different. One would have said there was a touch of cruelty in the mouth. It was certainly strange. He turned round and looked at the window, drew at the blinds. The bright dawn flooded the room and wept a fantastic shadows into dark corners, where they lay shuddering. But the strange expression he had once on the face of the portrait seemed to linger there, and intensified even. The quivering, argent sunlight showed him the lines of cruelty around the mouth were clearly as if he had been looking into a mirror, after he had done some dreadful things. He winced and taken up the table an oval glass framed in ivory cupids, one of Lord Henry's many presents to him, glanced hurriedly into the polished depths. No line that warped his red lips. What did it mean? He rubbed his eyes and came close to the picture. He examined it again. There were no signs of any changes when he looked into the actual painting, and yet there was no doubt the whole expression had altered. It was not merely a fancy of his own. The thing was horribly apparent. He threw himself into a chair and began to think. Suddenly, there flashed across his mind that he had said in Basil Hallward's studio the day that the picture had been finished. Yes, he remembered it perfectly. He had uttered a mad wish that he himself might remain young and the portrait grow old, that his own beauty might be untarnished, and the face of the canvas bear the burden of his passions and sins, that his paintings imagined might be seared into the lines of suffering as though, and that he might keep all the delicate bloom and loveliness of his then, his conscious boyhood. Surely his wish had not been fulfilled. Such things were impossible. It seems monstrous, even to think of them. And yet, there was a picture before him with the touch of cruelty in his mouth. Cruelty? Had he been cruel? Was it the girl's fault, not his? Had he dreamed of her as a great artist? Had given his love to her because he had thought her great? And she had disappointed him, and she had been shallow and unworthy, and yet a feeling of infinite regret came over him. As he thought of her lying on his feet, sobbing like a little child, he remembered what callous he had watched her. Why had he been like that? What has such a soul been given to him? He had suffered also during the 3 terrible hours the play had lasted. He had lived centuries of pain, aeon of torture, eon upon eon of torture. His life was well worth hers. She had married him for a moment, but he had wounded her for an age. Besides, women were much suited to bear sorrow than men. They lived on their emotions, only thought their emotions where they took lovers, and it was merely to have one with whom they could have scenes. Lord Henry had told them that, and Lord Henry knew what women were. Why should he trouble about Sybil Vane? She was nothing to him now. But the picture? What has he had to say of that? He held a secret of his life and told his story. He had taught him to love his own beauty. Would it teach him to loathe his own soul? Would he ever look at it again? No, it was merely an illusion, wrought by the troubled senses in a horrible night that he had passed and left phantoms behind it. Suddenly, there had fallen upon his brain in the tiny scarlet speck that makes men mad. The picture had not changed. It was a folly to think so. Yet he was watching him in his beautiful marred face, and its cruel smile. I lost my place somehow. Its bright hair gleamed in the early sunlight. His blue eyes met his own. A sense of infinite pity, not for himself, but for the painted image of himself, came over him. It had altered already, and would alter more. Its gold would wither into gray. Its red and white roses would die. For every sin he had committed, a stain would fleck and wreck his fairness. But he would not sin. The picture changed, so unchanged, would be to him the visible emblem of consciousness. He would resist temptation. He would not see Lord Henry any more. Would not, at this rate. But in those subtle poisonous theories that in Basil Hallward's garden had been stirred within him, the passion for impossible things, he would go back with Sybil Vane. make her amends, marry her, and try to love her again. Yes, it would be his duty to do so. She must have suffered more than he had. Poor child, he had been selfish and cruel to her. The fascination she had exercised over him would return. They would be happy together. His life would be her, and his life with her would be beautiful and pure. He got up from his chair and drew a large screen right in front of the portrait, shuddering as he glanced at it. How horrible, he murmured to himself, and he walked across to the window and opened it. When he stepped out in the grass, he drew away all his somber passions. He thought only of Sybil. A faint echo of his love came back to him. He repeated her name over and over again. The birds were singing in the dew-drenched garden, seemed to be to retell the flowers about her. Let's see how long chapter 8 is, because I might take a little break before another chapter. It's a little bit long chapter, so I'm going to take a quick bathroom break, and I will be back in a couple minutes. Hope that you enjoyed so far. Oh, I almost just clicked end stream. No, not that. And I am back. I don't know why this thing looks different. Okay. Let's get back into it. I'm actually going to change the title because we're actually going to do 9 chapters. Oh wow, that's going to look weird. But I'm also going to take out this bit and make it feel free to chat instead. Okay. Let's get back into it. We're actually going to read 4 chapters today instead of 3. So now I'm actually getting pretty quickly through this. Okay. Hold on, it's upside down. That's one. Okay. Water. Chapter 8. It was long past noon when he awoke. His valet had crept several times on tiptoes into his room to see if he was stirring. He had wondered what made his young master sleep so late. Finally his bell sounded, and Victor came in softly with a cup of tea, a pile of letters, and a small tray of old Sevres china, and drew back the olive satin curtains with their shimmering blue lining, and hung in front of the 3 tall windows. Monsieur has well slept this morning, he said, smiling. What o'clock is it, Victor? Said Dorian Gray drowsily. 1 hour and a quarter, Monsieur. How late it was! He sat up and having sipped some tea, turned over his letters. One of them was from Lord Henry, had been brought by hand this morning. He hesitated for a moment and put it aside. The others he opened listlessly. They contained his usual collection of cards, invitations to dinner, tickets for private views, programs of charity concerts, and the likes that are shown on fashionable young men every morning. During the season, there was a rather heavy bill for a chase silver Louis Quintus toilet sets he had not yet had the courage to send on his guardians, who were extremely old-fashioned people and did not realize that we live in an age wherein unnecessary things are the only necessities, and there are several very courteous worded communications from Jermyn Street moneylenders offering to advance any sum of money at the moment's notice, and the most reasonable rates of interest. After about 10 minutes, he got up, throwing on an elaborate dressing gown of silk and bordered cashmere wool, passed into the onyx-paved bathrooms. The cool water refreshed him in his long sleep. He seemed to have forgotten that all he had gone through. A dim sense of having taken part in some strange tragedy came to him, once or twice, but there was the unreality of the dream about it. As soon as he was dressed, he went into the library and sat down to light some French breakfast that had been laid out for him. On a small round table close to the open window was an exquisite egg. The warm air seemed laden with spices. A bee flew in and buzzed. I don't know where I got brie from. A bee flew in and buzzed around the blue dragon bowl after, filled with sulphur yellow roses, stood before him. He felt perfectly happy. Suddenly his eyes fell on the screen he had been placed in front of the portrait. He startled. Too cold for Monsieur? He asked his valet, putting an omelette on the table. I shut the window? Dorian shook his head. I am not cold, he murmured. Which was it all true? Had the portrait really changed? Or had it been simply his own imagination that he had made him look evil? Or there had been a look of joy? Surely a painted canvas could not alter. The thing was absurd. It would serve as a tale to tell Basil someday. It would make him smile, and yet how vivid was his recollection of the whole thing. Oh, how did I lose my place? Oh, I lost my place. I was gonna go in a random spot that I know I've already read. Was it all true? Had the portrait really changed? Had it been somebody's imagination that made him look so evil? Where there had been a look of joy? Surely a painted canvas could not alter. The thing was absurd. It would have served as a tale to tell Basil someday. It would make him smile. And yet how vivid of his recollection was the whole thing is. That's where I was, I'm pretty sure. First in the dim twilights, then in the bright dawn, he had seen the touch of cruelty around his warped lips. He almost dreaded his valet leaving the room. He knew that when he was alone he would have to examine the portrait. He was afraid of certainty. When the coffee and cigarettes had been brought to the man turned to go, he felt a wild desire to tell him to remain. As the door was closely behind him, He called back to him. The man stood waiting for his orders. Dorian looked at him for a moment. I am not at home to to anyone, Victor, he said with a sigh. The man bowed and retired. Then he rose to the table, lit a cigarette, and flung himself down on a luxurious, cushioned couch that stood facing the screen, and the screen was an old one of gilt Spanish leather, stamped and wrought with a rather florid Luis Cortes pattern. He scanned it curiously, wondered if it had been concealed the secret of a man's life. Should he move it aside? After all, why not let it stay there? What was the use of knowing? If the thing was true, it was terrible. If it was not true, why trouble about it? But what if, by some fate or deadlier chance, eyes other than his spied behind and caught this horrible change? What should he do if Basil Hallward came and asked to look at his own picture? Basil would be sure to do that. No, the thing would have been examined at once, and at once anything would be better than this dreadful state of doubt. He got up and locked both doors. At least he would be alone, and that he looked upon the mask of his shame. Then he drew the screen aside and saw himself face to face. It was perfectly true. The portrait had altered, as he often remembered it afterwards, and not always with no small wonder. He found himself at first gazing at the portrait with a feeling of almost scientific interest. That such a change would have taken place it was incredible to him, and yet it was a fact. Well, there was some subtle infinity between the chemical atoms that shaped themselves and formed the color of the canvas, and the soul that was within him. Could it be that what that soul thought, they realized? That what it dreamed, what they made true? Or was there some other, more terrible reason? He shuddered and felt afraid, and going back to the couch, lay there, gazing at the portrait in sickened horror. One thing, however, he felt that he had done for him had made him conscious how unjust, how cruel he had been to Sybil Vane. It was not too late to make preparations for that. She could still be his wife. His unreal and unselfish love would yield some higher influence. Would he transform into some nobler passion? And the portrait that Basil Hallward had painted of him would be a guide to him through life. Would it be to him what holiness is to some and conscious to others, and the fear of God to us all? There were opiates for remorse, drugs that could lull the moral sense of sleep. But here was a visible symbol for the degradation of sin. Here it was an ever-present sign of the ruin men brought upon their souls. 3 o'clock struck, and 4.5-hour ring and double chime. But Dorian Gray did not stir. He was trying to gather up the scarlet threads of life and to weave them into a pattern to find his way through this sequine labyrinth of passion through which he was wandering. He did not know what to do, or what he thought. Finally he went over to the table and wrote a passionate letter to the girl he had loved, imploring her forgiveness and accusing himself of madness. Boy, I was just knocked over. He covered page after page with wild words of sorrow and wilder words of pain. There's a luxury in self-reproach. There we blame ourselves. We feel that no one else had the right to blame us. It is the confession, not the priest, that gives us absolution. When Dorian had finished the letter, he felt as if he had forgiven. Suddenly there came a knock on the door, and he heard Lord Henry's voice outside. My dear boy, I must see you. Let me in at once. I can't bear you shutting yourself up like this. He made no answer at first, but remained quite still. The knocking still continued to grow louder. Yes, it had... Where did I leave? Oh, how do I keep losing my place? Yes, it was better to let Lord Henry in and to explain to him that new life he was going to lead. No quarrel with him. We are in chapter 8 already. It's just a very weird stream because normally there's normally very loud at this point, and I am very off topic. So this is, I'm not saying a nice change. I kind of miss the chaoticness right now. Yeah. Um. I don't know if you've been listening because you're lurking, but basically, the girl who's engaged to, he basically told her that he doesn't love her anymore because she was acting shallow, and basically, he thought he loved her, but it wasn't love. He was just infatuated with her because of how well of an actor she was. And the day that she was like, no, I'm not going to be a good actor. I see through all of this. This is not the life I'm supposed to have. And so she didn't act. And so he's like, oh, I don't love you anymore. Because he realized that that's the only reason why he liked her. Where did I leave off? He had no answer at first, remained quite still. The knocking still continued to grow louder. Yes, it was better to let Lord Henry in, and to explain to him that the new life he was going to lead, to quarrel with him as if it became necessary to quarrel, to part if parting was inevitable. He jumped up, drew the screen hastily across the picture, and unlocked the door. I am so sorry for that all, Dorian, said Lord Henry as he entered, but you must not think too much of it. Yeah. Do you mean about Sybil Vane? Said the lad. Yes, of course, answered Lord Henry, sinking his chair and slowly pulling off his yellow gloves. It is dreadful, from one point of view, but it's not your fault. Tell me, did you go behind and see her after the play was over? Yes. I felt sure you had. Did you make a scene with her? It was brutal. I was brutal, Harry, perhaps brutal. But it was all right now. I'm not sorry for anything that happened, but it has taught me to know myself better. Ah, Dorian, I'm so glad you take it that way. I'm afraid I would find you plunged in remorse and tearing that nice curly hair of yours. I have all gone through that, said Dorian, shaking his head and smiling. I am perfectly happy now. I know what conscience is, to begin with, but it is not what you have told me it was. It is the divinest thing in us. Don't sneer at it, Harry. Any more, at least not before me. I want to be good. I can't bear the idea of my soul being hideous. A very charming artistic basis for ethics. Dorian, I congratulate you on it, but how are you going to begin? By marrying Sybil Vane. By marrying Sybil Vane? Marrying Sybil Vane, cried Lord Wait, well, I don't know why I said that twice, and I meant to say that twice. By marrying Sybil Vane? Cried Lord Henry, standing up and looking at him in perplexed amazement. But my dear Dorian. Yes, Harry, I know what you're going to say. Something dreadful about marriage. Don't say it. Don't ever say anything about that kind to me again. 2 days ago I asked Sybil to marry me. I'm not going to break my word with her. She is to be my wife. Your wife, Dorian? Didn't you get my letter? I wrote it to you this morning and sent that note down by my own men. Your letter? Oh, yes, I remember. I have not read it yet. Harry, I was afraid there might be something in it. in it I would not like. You cut life into pieces of your epigrams. You know nothing, then? What do you mean? Lord Henry walked across his room and sitting down by Dorian Gray, both his hands in his own, and held them tightly. Dorian, he said, my letter, don't be frightened. I don't know why I keep losing my place. Was to tell you that Sybil Vane is dead. A cry of pain broke from the lad's lips, and he leapt to his feet, tearing his own hands away from Lord Henry's grasp. Dead? Sybil Vane dead? Sybil dead? It is not true. It is a horrific lie. How dare you say that? It is quite true, Dorian, said Lord Henry gravely. It is all the morning's papers. I wrote it down to you and asked you not to see anyone else until I came. There has been an inquest, of course, and you must not be mixed up in it. Things like that make men fashionable in Paris, but London people are so prejudiced. Here, one should never make one's debut with such a scandal. One should reserve them for an interest in one's old age. I suppose they don't know your name in the theatre. if they don't, it is all right. Did anyone see you go around to her room? It's an important point. Dorian did not answer for a few moments. He was dazed with horror. Finally, he stammered in a stifled voice. Harry, did you say an inquest? What do you mean by that? Did Sybil? Oh, Harry, I can't bear it. But be quick. Tell me everything at once. I have no doubt that it was not an accident. Dorian, though it must be put in that way to the public, it seems that she was leaving the theater with her mother about 12:30 or so. She said she had forgotten something upstairs. They waited for some time for her, but she did not come down again. They waited for some time for... Oh, I just already read that. They ultimately found her lying dead on the floor in her dressing room. She had swallowed something by mistake. Some dreadful thing they used in the theaters. I don't know what it was. It had either been prussic acid or some white lead in it. I should fancy it was prussic acid. She seemed to have died instantaneously. Harry, this is terrible, cried the lad. Hello, how are you doing today? I don't know, what was I gonna say? I don't think you have been in my reading streams yet, have you? Oh, sure. This stream has been very unchaotic, what's the right word? Uncharacteristically chaotic. Okay. Yeah, that, I haven't read this in a couple years. I knew that was coming up, but I didn't realize, like it was all in the papers and everything. Okay, let's hop back in. Harry, this is terrible, cried the lad. Yes, it is very tragic, of course, but you mean not to get yourself mixed up in it. I see by the standard that she was 17. I should have thought she was almost younger than that. She looked so much like a child. She seemed to know so little about acting. Dorian, you mustn't let these things get on your nerves. You must come and dine with me. And afterwards we will look in the opera. It is pâté night, and everyone will be there. You will come into my sister's box, and she has some smart woman with her. So I have murdered Sybil Vane, said Dorian Gray, half to himself. Murdered her as surely as if I had cut her own throat with a knife. Yet the roses are not less lovely for that all. The birds sing just as happily in my garden, and tonight I am to dine with you. And there goes on the opera, and sup somewhere, I suppose, afterwards. How extraordinarily dramatic life is. If I had read all that in the book, Harry, I think I would have wept over it. Somehow, now that has happened actually, and to me it seems far too wonderful for tears. Here is the passionate love letter I have written in my life. Strange that my first passionate love letter should have been addressed to a dead girl. Can you feel, I wonder, these white silence people we call the dead? Sybil, can she feel, or listen? Oh, Harry, how I've loved her once. It seems years ago now to me. She was everything to me. That came to the dreadful night. It was only last night, when she had played so badly and my heart almost broke. She explained it all to me. It was terribly pathetic, but I was not moved a bit. I thought her shallow. Suddenly something happened that made me afraid. I can't tell you what it was, but it was terrible. I said I would go back to her. I felt I'd done her wrong. And she is dead. Oh my God, Harry. What shall I do? You don't know the danger I'm in. There is nothing to keep me straight. She would have done that for me. She had no right to kill herself. It was selfish of her. My dear Dorian, answered Lord Henry, taking a cigarette from his case and producing a gold-laden matchbox. The only way a woman can ever reform a man is by boring him so completely that he loses all possible interest in life. If you had married this girl, you would have been wretched. Of course, you would have treated her kindly. One can always be kind to people of whom one cares nothing. But she would have soon found out that you were absolutely indifferent to her. When a woman finds out about her husband, she either becomes dreadfully dowdy, or wears very smart bonnets and some other woman's husband has to pay for. I say nothing about the social mistake, which would have been abject, which, of course, I would not have allowed. But I assure you that in any case the whole thing would have been an absolute failure. I suppose it would, muttered the lad, walking up and down the room, looking horribly pale. But I thought it was my duty. Is it not my fault that this terrible tragedy has prevented my doing which was right? I remember your saying once there was infancy about good relationships. They had always been made too late. Mine certainly were. Good resolutions are always useless attempts to intervene with scientific laws. Their origin is pure vanity. Their result is absolutely nihil. They give us, now and then, some of those luxurious, sterile emotions that have certain charm for the weak. That is all that can be said for them. They are simply checks that men draw up to a bank where they have no account. Harry, cried Dorian Gray, coming over and sitting down beside him. Why is it that I cannot feel this tragedy as much as I want to? I don't think I'm heartless, do you? You have done too many foolish things during the last fortnight to be entitled to give yourself that name, Dorian, answered Lord Henry, with his sweet melancholy smile. The lad frowned. I don't like that expression, Harry, he rejoined, but I am glad you don't think I am heartless. I am nothing of the kind, I know I am not, and yet I must admit that this thing that has happened does not affect me as it should. It seems to me that be simply like a wonderful ending to a wonderful play has been the terrible beauty of a Greek tragedy, a tragedy in which I took a great part, but by which I have not been wounded. It is an interesting question, said Lord Henry, who found an exquisite pleasure in playing with the lad's unconscious egotism. An extremely interesting question. I fancy that this is a true explanation of this. It often happens when the real tragedies in life occurs in such an inartistic manner that they hurt us by their crude violence, in their absolute incoherence, in their absurd want of meaning, their entire lack of style. They affect us just as vulgarity affects us. They give us an impression of a sheer brute force that we revolt against that. Sometimes, however, a tragedy that possesses artistic elements of beauty crosses our lives. If these elements of beauty are real, the whole thing simply appeals to our senses of dramatic effects. Suddenly we find that we are no longer the actors, but we are spectators of the play. Rather, we are both. We watch ourselves, and the more wonder the spectacle enthralls us. In the present case, what is that has really happened? One has killed herself for love for you. I wish that I had ever had such an experience. It had made me in love with love for the rest of my life. The people who have adored me, there have not been very many, but there have been some, have always insisted on living on, long after I had ceased to care for them, or they cared for me. They had become as stout and tedious. When I met them, they had go at once for eminence. That awful memory of woman. What a fearful thing it is, and what an utter intellectual stagnation it reveals. One should absorb the color of life, and one should never remember it in details that are vulgar. I must sow poppies in my garden, sighed Dorian. There is no necessity, rejoined the king's companion. Life is always poppies in his hand. Of course, now when the things are linger, I once were nothing but violets, as though one season is a form of artistic mourning for a romance that would not die. Wait. I want to Google this before I say this, but I think poppies, there's like a language of flowers. I believe poppies have something to do with death. Let me Google this just in case. Meaning. Yes. It does. Okay. I just want to make sure before I said that. So yeah, when he's talking about sowing poppies, it's basically as like a remembrance of someone, like memorials and stuff. They plant poppies there, so that's what he's talking about. I just wanted to Google it in case that I didn't want to say that before being sure. I must sow poppies in my garden, sighed Dorian. There is no necessity, rejoiced his companion. Life has always poppies in her hand. Of course, now and then things linger. I once wore nothing but violets all through one season, as a form of artistic mourning for a romance that would not die. Ultimately, however, it did die. I forgot what killed it. I think it was her proposing to sacrifice the whole world for me. That is always a dreadful moment. It fills me with terror of eternity. Would you believe it? A week ago at Lady Hampshire's, I found myself seated at a dinner next to a lady in question, and she insisted on going over the whole thing again, and digging at the past, raking up the future, and buried any romance in a bed of asphodels. Okay, so, bed of asphodels is so the book Discrimination is a Mediterranean lily, wildly grown on Iceland fields symbolizing death and mortality. It is also in the fields of asphodel. In Greek mythology, that's the underworld. So, also symbolizes death and immortality. We are reading The Picture of Dorian Gray. We are actually a decent chunk into it, but I keep stopping every so often to explain different things, because I read this book many of times. Like, I just explained the meaning of poppies because they were talking about poppies in the book, and the context that the language of flowers would need an explanation of. I also just explained what asphodels mean, a bed of asphodels in that case. Yes. It is my favorite book. Picture of Dorian Gray. I would consider it kind of a horror book. It has horror themes to it, I would say. But we are getting to the horror themes, halfway through the book. Yes. She dragged it out again and assured me that it had spoiled her life. I am bound to state that she had ate an enormous dinner, so I did not feel any anxiety. But what lack of taste she showed. The one charm of the past is that it is the past, but women never know what the curtain has fallen. They always want a sixth act, and so shown as the interest of the play is entirely over. They proposed to continue it, and they were allowed their own way. Every comedy would have a tragic ending, and every tragedy would accumulate in a farce. They are charmingly artificial, and they have no sense of art. We are more fortunate than I assure you, Dorian, that not one of the women I have known would have done for me what Sybil Vane did for you. Extraordinary women always console themselves. Some of them do it by going in for sentimental colors. Never trust a woman who wears mauve. Whatever her age might be, or a woman over 35 who is fond of pink ribbons. It always means that they have a history. Others find a great consolation in suddenly discovering the good qualities of their husband. They flaunt their conjugal facility in one's face, as if they were most fascinating of sins. Religion consoles some. Its mystery has all the charm of flirtation. A woman who once told me that I quite understand it. Besides, nothing makes one so vain as being told that one is a sinner. Consolence makes egotistics of us all. Yes, there is really no end to the consolation that women find in modern life. Indeed, I have not mentioned the most important one. What is that, Henry? Said the lad listlessly. Oh, the obvious consolation. Taking someone else's admirer from one loses one's own. In good society, that always whitewashes a woman. But really, Dorian, how different Sybil Vane must have been for all the women who meets. There is something to me quite beautiful about her death. I am glad I am living in a century where such wonders happen. They make one believe in the reality of things we all play with, such as romance, passion, and love. I was terribly cruel to her. You forget that. I am afraid that women appreciate cruelty, downright cruelty, more than anything else. They have wonderfully primitive instincts. They have emancipated them. They remain slaves, looking for their masters all the same. They love being dominated. I am sure you were splendid. I have never seen you really and absolutely angry, but I can fancy how delightful you looked, and after all, you said something to me the day before yesterday that seemed to me that all the time I was merely fanciful. I see now was absolutely true, and it holds the key to everything. What was that, Henry? You said to me that Sybil Vane represented to you all the heroines of romance, that she was Desdemona one night and Ophelia the other, and that she died as Juliet and came to life as Imogen. She will never come to life now, muttered the lad, burying his face in his hands. No, she will never come back alive. She has played her last parts, but you must think of that lonely death in the tall dressed room simply as a strange third fragment of some Jacobin tragedy, as a wonderful scene from Webster or Ford or Cyril Turner. The girl never really lived, and she has never really died. If you at least she was to you at least she was always a dream, a phantom that flitted through Shakespeare's plays and left them lovelier in the presence, a reed through which Shakespeare's music sounded richer and more full of joy than when she touched actual life. She marred it, and it marred her. So she passed away. Cordelia was strangled. Cry it out against heaven because the daughter of Barbento died. I don't waste your tears over Sybil Vane. She is less real than they are. There was silence. Evening darkened in the room. Noiseless with silver feet, and shadows crept in front of the garden, the colors faded wearily out of the things. After some time Dorian Gray looked up. You have explained me to myself, Harry. He murmured with something of a sigh of relief. I felt that all you have said, but somehow I was afraid of it, and I could not express it to myself. How well you know me. But we will not talk again about what happened. It had been a marvelous experience. That is all. I wonder if life had still been in store for me anything but marvelous. Anything as marvelous. Life has everything in store for you, Dorian. There is nothing that you, with your extraordinary good looks, will not be able to do. But suppose, Harry, I became haggard and old and wrinkled, what then? Then, said Lord Henry, rising to go, then, my dear Dorian, you wouldn't have to fight for your victories, as they are, brought to you. No, you must keep your good looks. We live in our age that reads too much to be wise, and thinks too much to be beautiful. We cannot spare you, and now that you have better dressed and drive down to the club, you are rather late, is it as it is? I think I shall join you at the opera, Harry. I feel too tired to eat anything. What is the number of your sister's box? 27, I believe. It is on the grand tier. You will see her name on the door. I am sorry you won't come to dine. I don't feel up to it, said Dorian listlessly. I am awfully obliged to you. I am for all that you have said to me. You are certainly my best friend. No one has ever understood me as you have. You are only at the beginning of our friendship, Dorian, answered Dorian Gray, shaking by his head. Goodbye. I shall see you before 9:30. I hope. Remember, Patty is singing. As he closed the door behind him, Dorian Gray touched the bell. In a few minutes, Victor appeared about the lamps and drew the blinds down. He waited impatiently for him to go. The man seemed to take an measurement upon the time about everything. As soon as he had left, he rushed to the screen and drew it back. No, there was no further change to the picture. He had received the news of Sybil Vane's death before he had known it himself. It was conscious in the events of life that had occurred. A vicious cruelty that marred the first lines of his mouth, no doubt, appeared at the very moment the girl had drunk the poison. Whatever it was an indifferent to results. Did it merely take recognition of what passed within the soul? He wondered and had hoped that some day he would see the change take place before his very eyes, shuddering as he hoped it. Poor Sybil had a romance it had all been. She had often mimicked death on the stage. Then death itself had touched her and taken her with him. How she played the dreadful last scene. Had she cursed him as she died? No, she had died with love for him. The love that had always been sacrament to him now. She had atoned for everything by the sacrifice she had made to her life. He would not make it any more of what had made him go through. She had made him go through. That horrible night in the theater. When he thought of her, he would be as a horrible, tragic figure sent to the world stage to show the supreme reality of life. A wonderful, tragic figure. Tears came to his eyes, he remembered her childlike look. A woesome, fanciful ways, shy, tremulous grace, he brushed them away hastily and looked again at the picture. He felt that the time had really come to make his choice. Or had his choice already been made? Yes, life had decided that for him, life has its own infinite curiosity about life. Eternal youth, infinite passion, pleasures subtle and secret, wild joys and wider sins. He was always to have all these things. The portrait was to bear the burden of the shame. That was all. A feeling of pain crept over him as he thought of the desecration that was in store for the fair face of the canvas. Once in boyish mockery of Narcissus, he had kissed or feigned to kiss those painted lips that had now smiled so cruelly at him. Morning after morning he had sat before the portrait, wondering of his beauty, almost enamored of it. It seemed to him, as times, was it to alter now with every mood as which he yielded, or is it to become a monstrous and loathsome thing, to be hidden away from the locked room, or to shut it out from the sunlight, had often touched a brighter gold in the waving wonder of his hair. Pity of it, the pity of it. For a moment he thought of praying that the horrible sympathy that had existed between him and the picture might cease. It had changed in answer to prayer. Perhaps an answer to a prayer might remain unchanged, and yet who that knew anything about life would surrender the chance of remaining always young, however fantastic their change might be, or with what fate consequences it might be fraught. Besides, was it really under his control? Had it indeed been prayer that had been produced the substitution? Might there not be some curious scientific reason for it all, as though could exercise an influence upon the living organism? Might not, though, exercise an influence upon dead and inorganic things? Now, without thought or conscious desire, might not things eternal to ourselves vibrate in unison with our moods and passions? Oh my goodness. Wishful?
Wishful? 23
Oh my
rated
goodness.
your channel with 30 viewers.
Hi. Thank you. Alright, let's do a little shout out for you. Oh, of course, there's an ad right now. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Okay. I absolutely love Wishful's streams. Let me do a little shout out. Hopefully this works. Wishful Thinker 23. Did it work? Yes, it worked. Okay. Hi. Oh, that's so Oh my goodness. Okay. This is crazy. Okay. So, we are reading The Picture of Dorian Gray. We are on chapter 8, and basically what recently happened was, okay, we are, how am I already on page 121? Oh, I lost my train of thought. Oh my goodness. Oh, sorry, I forgot to introduce myself. Hi, I'm Ultra Blue, or Ultra, whatever you want to call me, it's fine. I do reading streams, I do Minecraft and Fallout 76, and Sims 4 streams. Earlier today, I am doing a Rocks to Riches streams. We are actually going to be pulling an all-nighter today, but we're just only reading. We might do a little Fallout 76 stream at like 4 in the morning. We never know. It might not. I don't know. But, I greatly appreciate the raid, Wishful. If you don't know, Wishful is one of the people that actually inspired me to start streaming. Yeah. Okay, let's get back into it. Basically, to kind of summarize what's happened so far. Dorian Gray was in love with this girl who, was an actress, and um, she played Juliet and many other, heroines of romance plays. And, I need to mark that in my stream. And, he thought he was in love with her. He wasn't. He was more, I don't know if enamored is the right word. He was, to summarize what happened. Yeah, basically. um, basically, Dorian Gray was in love with this girl. He was actually enamored with her. I'm just gonna say enamored. I think that's the right word I'm looking for. Instead of actually in love with her, and he's like, oh, I'll marry you. And a day later, he's trying to introduce her to her friends at her play that she was playing Juliet at. And she was so, what's the right word? I can't, it's hard to think when I have 30 people. It's so crazy. I know! Nick, did you see that? Did you see that? Yes, I think infatuated was a better word. It's just how, like, I read it from his perspective, it sounded like enamored, but, like, I think infatuated was the right word from an outside perspective. I might be thinking of a different character, I don't know. I don't know why I said enamored. I didn't think that was the right word when I said that, but I just said it because I couldn't think of infatuated. Infatuated was the right word I was looking for. And he was like, he only was in love with it's hard to think right now. He thought he loved her, he didn't. It was just, like, her acting, that he was, like, how she could act so many different people, and she was all great at it, and then she realized, oh, I don't like this, I don't want to be an actress, I see through all these things, this is not the life I want. So, like, her last play, she acted horribly on purpose for 3 hours, and that he lost all his love for her. And he was like, yeah, I'm not gonna marry you anymore. And so he told her that, and told her that that was dreadful. I was bored out of my mind, like, all these things, and she ended up unaliving herself over that. And where we are in the story, yes, you should definitely follow Wishful. I did do a little shout out if you scroll up a bit. Yes. Yeah, and so Lord Henry is actually, like, telling him all these things, that it's not his fault, that, he shouldn't be, he shouldn't be sorry for what he did, all this stuff, and he's going through all the stages of grief right now. And he's actually noticing that in his portrait that he has, that Basil, whatever, made him, that the lines in the portrait are looking a bit different. And that, yeah, you're good. I really appreciate it. You're going shopping at 10 p.m.? It is actually almost 1 a.m. where I am. And, what was I gonna say? Yeah, he's noticing that the portrait is starting to the portrait lines are starting to shift, they're starting to look more, I don't want to say, I think sinister. He actually, to use the word sinister, I'm going to use the word sinister. Like, the lines are starting to look like he has done something horrible, like, and you can tell on his face that he's done something horrible. He remains youthful, obviously, because the painting was only made, like, a week ago, at this point. Yeah. So that's what he's doing right now, he's looking at the portrait right now. Let's start right here. I think it's a good spot to start with this. I am so sorry of giving yourself the trouble of coming around, Mr. Hubbard. Wait, what? Wait, I'm confused. Did I just completely forgot right? Yes, I think I accidentally, like, skipped a page because I was so confused. Yeah, why am I in chapter 10? That's the wrong chapter. We were in chapter 8. It's almost...
Who wants to play video games?
I'm surprised Nick did not use that. I don't know why I completely lost my train of thought to where I was supposed to read. You already read that part. Let's just start beginning the chapter. I feel like we should just start the beginning of the chapter since there's a lot more people. Okay. It was long past noon when he awoke. Oh, you're okay. I encourage people to just kind of do whatever they want. Not do whatever they want. That's not what I meant to say. They can. I don't care. This isn't like a space where you can just be quiet and just listen. You can certainly just chat and just try to talk, because I get off track very easily, but I like talking and I take little breaks from when I'm reading, so you are more than welcome to do the little alerts. I need to fix my alerts. I don't have, like, okay, sadly, I don't know if Winter or Wendy are in here, but I might take out their special alerts and fill in the space with something else. It was long past noon when he awoke. His valet had crept several times to tiptoe into the room to see if he was stirring. He was wondering what had made his young master sleep so late. Finally his bell sounded, and Victor came in softly with a cup of tea and a pile of letters on a small tray of old Cerberus china, and drew back the olive satin curtains with the shimmering blue lining that hung in front of 3 tall windows. "Monsieur has slept well this morning?" he said, smiling. "What o'clock is it, Victor?" asked Dorian drowsily. "1 hour and a quarter." "Monsieur, how late was it? How late it was?" He sat up and having sipped tea some time, turned over his letters, and one of them was from Lord Henry. It had been brought by hand this morning. He hesitated for a moment, then put it aside. The others had opened listlessly. They contained the usual collection of cards, invitations to dinner, tickets for private viewings, programs for charity concerts, and the like that were shown on fashionable young men every morning during the season. There was a rather heavy bill for a chased silver Louis Quintus toilet set that had not yet been made the courage to send to his guardians, who were extremely old-fashioned people, and did not realize... sorry, I don't know what just made me lose my place. He did not realize that they live in an age where unnecessary things are only most necessities. There were several very courteously worded communications from German streets, moneylenders offering to advance any sum of money for a moment's notice and for a most reasonable rate of interest. After about 10 minutes he got up and threw on an elaborate dressing gown of silk embroidered cashmere wool and pressed on into the onyx-paved bathroom. The cool water refreshed him after his long sleep. He seemed to have forgotten that he had gone through a dim sense of having taken part in some strange tragedy came to him once or twice, but there were the unreality of a dream about it. As soon as he was dressed, he went into the library and sat down to a French breakfast that had been laid out in front of him. For a small warm air seemed laden with spices. I keep losing my voice. I think I'm just nervous. There's people watching. A bee flew in and buzzed around. The blue dragon bowl that filled with sulphur yellow roses stood before him. He felt perfectly happy. Suddenly, his eyes fell on the screen had placed in front of the portrait. He startled. "Too cold, Monsieur?" asked his valet, putting an omelet on the table. "I shut the windows?" Dorian shook his head. "I am not cold," he murmured. Was it all true? Had the portrait really changed? Or had it been simply his own imagination that he had seen himself a look of evil where he had looked of joy? Surely a painted canvas could not alter. The thing was absurd. It would serve as a tale to tell Basil some day. It would make him smile. And yet how vivid it was his recollection of the whole thing. First at the dim twilight, and then at the bright dawn, he had seen the touch of cruelty round the warped lips. He almost dreadful his valet leaving the room. He knew that he was alone. He would have to examine the portrait. He was afraid of certainty. When the coffee and cigarettes had been brought to them, and the man turned to go, he felt a wild desire to tell him to remain. As the door was closing behind him, he called him back. The man stood, waiting for his orders. Dorian looked at him for a moment. I'm not at home to anyone, Victor, he said with a sigh. The man bowed and retired, and he rose from the table, lit a cigarette, and flung himself down on a luxurious cushioned couch, and stood facing the screen. And the screen was an old one of gilt Spanish leathers, and stamped and wrought with a rather florid Louis Cortez pattern. He scanned it curiously, wondering if it ever had been concealed the secret of man's life. Should he move it aside after all? Why not let it stay here? What's the use of knowing? If the thing was true, it was terrible. If it was not true, why trouble about it? But what if, by some fate or deadlier chance, eyes other than his spied behind and saw the horrible change? What should he do if Basil Hallward came and asked to look at his own picture? Basil would be sure to do that. No, the thing had to be examined at once. Anything would be better than this dreadful state of doubt. He got up and locked both doors. At least he would be alone with it when he looked upon the mask of his shame. Then he drew the screen aside and saw himself face to face. It was perfectly true, and the portrait had been altered. It had often remembered afterwards, and always had no small wonder. He found himself at first gazing at the portrait with a feeling of almost scientific interest. That such a change should have been taken place incredible to him, and yet it was a fact. Was there some subtle infinity between the chemical atoms and the shape of themselves, and to form the color of the canvas and the soul that was within him? Could it be that the soul thought they realized that what it dreamed was they made true, or was there some terrible reason? He shuddered and felt afraid. Going back to the couch, lay there and gazing at the picture in sickened horror. One thing, however, he felt had done for him had made him conscious how unjust, how cruel he had been to Sybil Vane. It was not too late to make reparations for that. She could still be his wife. His unreal and selfish love would yield to some higher influence, would be transformed to some nobler passion. In the portrait that Basil Hallward had painted for him would be a guide to him through life. Would it be to him that holiness is to some and conscience to others? And the fear of God to us all. There are opiates for most, drugs that could lull the moral sense to sleep, but here was a visible symbol of degradation of sin. Here there was ever-present sign that ruined men upon their souls. 3 o'clock struck, and then 4, and half an hour rang in double chime, but Dorian Gray did not stir. He was trying to gather up the scarlet threads of life and weave them into a pattern, to find his way through the sequined labyrinth of passion through which he was wandering. He did not know what to do or what to think. Finally he went over to the table and wrote a passionate letter to the girl he had loved, imploring her forgiveness and accusing himself of madness. He covered page after page with wild words of sorrow, and wilder words of pain. There is a luxury in self-reproach. When we blame ourselves, we feel that no one else had the right to blame us. It is the confession, not the priest, that gives us absolution. When Dorian had finished the letter, he felt that he had been forgiven. Suddenly there came a knock at the door, and he heard Lord Henry's voice outside. "My dear boy, I must see you. Let me in at once. I can't bear it." Sorry, tea break. "My dear boy, I must see you. Let me in at once. I can't bear you shutting yourself up like this." He made no answer at first, but remained quite still. The knocking still continued and grew louder. Yes, it was better to let Lord Henry in, and to explain to him that the new life he was going to lead, to quarrel with him as if it became necessary to quarrel, to part if parting was inevitable. He jumped up, drew the screen hastily across the picture, and locked the door. "I am so sorry for it all, Dorian, said Lord Henry as he entered. You must not think too much about it. Do you mean about Sybil Vane? asked the lad. Yes, of course, answered Lord Henry, sinking into a chair and slowly pulling off his yellow gloves. It is dreadful. From one point of view, it is not your fault. Tell me, did you go behind and see her after the play was over? Yes, I felt sure you had. Did you make a scene with her? It was brutal, Harry, perfectly brutal. But it's all right now. I am not sorry for anything that has happened. It has taught me to know myself better. Dorian, I am so glad to take it that way. I was afraid I would find you plunged in remorse and tearing the nice curly hair of yours. I have got through all that, said Dorian, shaking his head and smiling. I am perfectly happy now. I know what conscience is. To begin with, it is not what you told me it was. It was the divinest thing in us. Don't sneer at it, Harry, any more, at least not before me. I want to be good. I can't bear the idea of my soul being hideous. A very charming artistic basis for ethics, Dorian. I congratulate you on it, but how are you going to begin? By marrying Sybil Vane. Marrying Sybil Vane? Cried Lord Henry, standing up and looking at him in perplexed amazement. But my dear Dorian, yes, Harry, I know what you're going to say, something dreadful about marriage. Don't say it. Don't ever think of that kind to me again. 2 days ago, I asked Sybil to marry me, and I'm not going to break my word to her. She is to be my wife. Your wife, Dorian? Didn't you get my letter? I wrote to you this morning, and I sent the note down by my own man. Your letter? Oh, yes, I remember. I have not read it yet, Harry. I was afraid there might be something in it that I wouldn't like. You cut life into pieces with your epigrams. You know nothing, then? What do you mean? Lord Henry walked across the room, sitting down, and Dorian Gray took both his hands in his own and held them tightly. Dorian, he said, my letter. Don't be frightened. I was to tell you that Sybil Vane is dead. A cry of pain broke from the lad's lips, and he leapt to his feet, tearing his hands away from Lord Henry's grasp. Dead? Sybil dead? It is not true. It is a horrible lie. How dare you say it? It is quite true, Dorian, said Lord Henry gravely. It is all the morning papers. I wrote down to you to ask you not to see anyone till I came. There will have been an inquest, of course, and you must not be mixed up in it. Things like that make a man fashionable in Paris, but in London people are so prejudiced. Here, one should never make one's debut with a scandal. One should reserve that to give an interest to in one's own age. I suppose they don't know your name in the theatre. If they don't, it'll be all right. Did anyone see you going around to her room? That's an important point. Dorian did not answer for a few moments. He was dazed with horror. Finally he stammered in a stifled voice. Harry, did you say an inquest? What do you mean by that? Did Sybil... Oh, Harry, I can't bear it. But be quick. Tell me everything at once. I have no doubt it was an accident, Dorian, though it must be put in the paper then that way. To the public, it seems that she was leaving to the theatre with her mother about 12:30 or so, and said that she had forgotten something upstairs. They waited some time for her, but she did not come down again. They waited some time oh, I already read that part. They ultimately found her lying dead on the floor in her dressing room. She was swallowed something by mistake, some dreadful thing they use in theatres. I don't know what it was, but it was either prussic acid or white lead in it. I should fancy it was prussic acid. She seemed to have died instantaneously. Harry, this is terrible, cried the lad. Yes, it is very tragic, of course, but you must not get yourself mixed up in it. I see by the standard that she was 17. I should have thought she was almost younger than that. She looked like a child. She seemed to know so little about acting. Dorian, you mustn't let this thing get down your nerves. You must come and dine with me, and afterwards you will look up into the opera. It is the Patty's night, and everyone will be there. It's Patty's night. Why did I say Patty? Okay. She is a British soprano of Italian origin, Adeline Patty, which that's who they're talking about. But I like that this edition has little like things in the bottom explaining different things. That's a horrible way to put it. You can come to my sister's box. She has got some smart woman with her. So I have married Sybil Vane, said Dorian Gray, half to himself, murdered her as surely as I had cut her little throat with a knife. Yet the roses are less lovely after that. Yes, yet the roses are not less lovely for that, all that. The birds sing just as happily in my garden tonight I am to dine with you, and then goes to the opera and sup somewhere, I suppose. Afterwards, how extraordinarily dramatic life is. If I had read all this book, Harry, I think I would have wept over it. Somehow now, that it was happier, actually, and then to me it seemed far too wonderful for tears, and here's the first passionate love letter I'd ever written to my life. Strange that it's the first passionate love letter to address to a dead girl. Can they feel, I wonder, those white little silent people we call the dead? Sybil, can she feel or know or listen? Oh, Harry, how I have loved her once. It seemed years ago to me now. She was everything to me, and then they came to that dreadful night. Was it really one last night? Was it really only last night? When she played so badly and my heart almost broke, she explained it all to me. It was terribly pathetic. But it was not moved a bit. I thought her shallow. Suddenly something happened that made me afraid. I can't tell you what it was, but it was terrible. I said I would go back to where I felt I was done wrong. And now she is dead. Oh my God, Harry, what should I do? You don't know the danger I'm in, and there is nothing to keep me straight. She would have done that for me. She had no right to kill herself. She was selfish of her. It was selfish of her. My dear Dorian, answered Lord Henry, a cigarette from his case, and produced a gold-laden matchbox. The only way a woman can reform a man is by boring him so completely he loses possible interest in life. If you had married this girl, it would have been wretched, of course. You would have treated her kindly. One can always be kind to people to whom one cares nothing. But she would have soon found out they were absolutely indifferent to her. When a woman finds out about her husband, she either becomes dreadfully dowdy, or wears very smart bonnets that some other woman's husband has to pay for. I say nothing about the social mistake. There would have been object to nothing, of course, I would not have allowed. But I assure you that in any case, the whole thing would have been an absolute failure. I suppose it would, muttered the lad, walking up and down the room and looking horribly pale as though it was my duty. It was not my fault. This terrible tragedy has prevented my doing. But it was right. I remember your saying that once there was a fatality about good resolutions. There was always made too late. Mine certainly were. Good resolutions are useless attempts to interfere with scientific laws. Their origin is pure vanity. Their result is absolutely nihil. They give us now and then some of those luxurious, sterile emotions that have a certain charm for the weak. That is all that can be said for them. They are simply checks the man drew on the bank where they have no account. Harry, cried Dorian Gray, coming over and sitting down beside him. Why is that I can feel this tragedy as much as I want to? That I cannot feel this tragedy as much as I want to. I don't think I am heartless, do you? You have done too many foolish things during the last fortnight to be entitled to give yourself that name, Dorian, answered Lord Henry, with a sweet melancholy smile. The lad frowned. I don't like that expression, Harry, he rejoined, but I am glad that you don't think I am heartless. I am nothing of the kind. I know that I am not, and yet I must admit that this thing has happened does not affect me as it should. It seems to me to be simply like a wonderful ending in a wonderful play. It has all the terrible beauty of a Greek tragedy. A tragedy in which I look great part, by which I have not been wounded. It is an interesting question, said Lord Henry, who found an exquisite pleasure in playing on the lad's unconscious egotism. An extremely interesting question. I fancy that this explanation is this. It has often happened that the real tragedy of life occurs in such an inartistic manner that they hurt us in a crude violence. Their absolute incoherence, their absolute want of meaning, their entire lack of style, they affect us just as vulgarity affects us. They give us an impression of sheer brute force, and a revolt against that. Sometimes, however, a tragedy that possesses artistic elements of beauty crosses our lives. If the elements of beauty are real, the whole thing simply appeals to our senses of dramatic effect. Suddenly we find that we are no longer the actors, but the spectators of the play. Or rather, we are both. We watch ourselves in the mere wonder of of the spectacle enthralls us. In that present case, what is it that has really happened? Someone has killed herself for love for you. I wished I had ever had such an experience. It would have made me in love with the love for the rest of my life. The people who have adored me, there has not been very many, but there have been some, and there's always insisted on living on. Long enough I had ceased to care for them, and they care for me. They have become stout and tedious when I meet them and go in at once for reminiscence. The awful memory of woman, what a fearful thing it is, what an utter intellectual stagnation it reveals. One should absorb the color of life, but one should remain its details. Details are always vulgar. I sow poppies in my garden. I must sow poppies in my garden. Okay, I mentioned this earlier when I was reading the chapter, but I restarted the chapter when I got rated. But poppies, like, signify, like mourning, basically. So him sowing poppies is basically telling everyone, like, I'm mourning right now. Kind of, yeah. That's kind of like a similar situation, I guess. Not situation, it's like because, like, a lot of people put them in for memorials and stuff, so it's kind of like a memorial for her, kind of. Yeah. So, I must sow poppies in my garden, sighed Dorian. There is no necessity. Oh, because this was published in 1890, so back then, like, the language of flowers was much more used, I guess, than it is today. There is no necessity, rejoined his companion. Life has always poppies in her hands. Of course, now and then, things linger. I once wore nothing but violets, all through one season, as a form of artistic mourning for a romance that would not die. Ultimately, however, it did die. I forgot what killed it. I think it was her proposing to sacrifice the whole world for me. That has always a dreadful moment. It fills one with terror of eternity. Well, would you believe it? A week ago at Lady Hampshire's, I found myself seated at dinner next to the lady in question, and she insisted on going over the whole thing again, and digging up the past and raking up the future, and I had buried in my romance in a bed of asphodels. She dragged it out and assured me that I had spoiled her life, that I am bound to state that she ate an enormous dinner, so I did not feel any anxiety, but what a lack of taste she showed. That one charm of the past is that it is the past. But women never know when the curtains have fallen. They always want a sixth act. As soon as the interest of the play is entirely over, they propose to continue it. If they were allowed their own way, every comedy would have a tragic ending, and every tragedy would accumulate in a farce. They are charmingly artificial, but they have no sense of art. You are more fortunate, then. I am, I assure you, Dorian, that not one of the women I have known would have done for me what Sybil Vane did for you. Ordinary women always console themselves. Some of them do it by going to her sentimental colors. Never trust a woman who wears mauve, whatever her age may be, or a woman over 35 who is fond of pink ribbons. It always means they have a history. Others find a great consolation in suddenly discovering the good qualities of their husbands. They flaunt their conjugal felicity in one's face as if they were most fascinating of sins. Religion consoles some, and mysteries have all the charm of flirtation. A woman told me that I can quite understand it. Besides, nothing makes one so vain as being told that one is a sinner. Consciousness makes egotistics of us all. Yes, it was really no end to the consolations that women find in modern life. Indeed, there is no mention of the most important one. What is that, Harry? Okay, so Harry and Henry is the same person, so I always, get mixed up. What is that, Harry? Said the lad listlessly. Oh, the obvious consolation. Taking someone else's admirer when one loses one's own. In good society, they always whitewash a woman, but really Dorian has different. Sybil Vane must have been But really, Dorian, how different Sybil Vane must have been from all the women one meets. There is something to me quite beautiful about her death. I am glad I am living in a century where such wonders happen. What makes one believe in the reality of the things we all play with, such as romance, passion, and love. I was terribly cruel to her. You forget that. I am afraid that women appreciate cruelty. Downright cruelty. More than anything else, they have wonderful primitive instincts. We have emancipated them, but they have remained slaves looking for their masters all the same. They love being dominated. I'm sure you were splendid. I have never seen you really and absolutely angry, but I can fancy how delightful you looked. After all, you said something to me the day before yesterday that seemed to me all the time to be merely fanciful. I see now you were absolutely true. It holds the key to everything. What was that, Harry? You said to me Sybil Vane represented you all the heroines of romance. That she was a Desdemona one night, and Ophelia the other, that she had died as Julia, she came back to life as Imogen. She will never come to life again now, muttered the lad, burying his face in his hands. No, she will never come to life. She had played her last part, but you must think of that lonely death in the tawdry dressing room simply as lucid. That's not lucid. It's lurid fragment of some Jacobean tragedy, as a wonderful scene from Register of Forbes or Cyril Tourmore. I butchered some of the names. I'm sorry about that. The girl really never really lives, and she has never really died. To you, or at least, she was always a dream, a phantom that flitted through Shakespeare's plays and left them lovelier in its presence. A reed through which Shakespeare's music sounded richer and more full of joy. The moment she touched actual life, she marred it, and it marred her. So she passed away. Mourn for Ophelia as you like. Put ashes on your head because Cordelia was strangled. Cry out against heaven because the daughter of Barbanto died. Don't waste your tears over Sybil Vane. She was less real than they are. There was a silence. That evening darkened in the room, noiseless and with silver feet. The shadows crept in from the garden, the colors faded wearily out of things. After some time Dorian looked up. You had explained me to myself, Harry, he murmured with a sigh of relief. I felt all that you have said, but somehow I was afraid of it. I could not express it myself. Well, how you know me, but we will not talk again. What has happened has been a marvelous experience. That is all. I'm wondering if life is still in store for me. Anything as marvelous. Life has everything in store for you, Dorian. There is nothing with your extraordinary good looks will not be able to. But suppose Harry became haggard, old and wrinkled, what then? Ah, then, said Lord Henry, rising to go. Then, my dear Dorian, you will have to fight for your victories, as it is. They are brought to you. No, you keep your good looks, and we live in an age where reads take too much to be wise, and then thinks too much to be beautiful. We cannot spare you, and you are now better dressed and driven to me. No, we cannot spare you. And now you have better dressed and drive down to the club. We rather join as it is late. We are rather late as it is. I think I shall join you in the opera, Harry. I am too tired to eat anything, and what is the number of your sister's box? 27, I believe. It is the grand tier. You will see your name on the door, but I am sorry you won't come and dine. I don't feel up to it, said Dorian listlessly. I am awfully obliged to you for all you have said to me. You are certainly my best friend. No one has ever understood me as you have. We are only at the beginning of our friendship, Dorian, answered Lord Henry, shaking him by the hand. Goodbye. I shall see you before 9:30, I hope. Remember, Patsy is singing. As he closed the door behind him, Dorian Gray touched the bell in a few minutes. Victor appeared with a lamp and drew the blinds down. He waited impatiently for him to go. The man seemed to take an interminable amount of time over everything. As soon as he had left, he rushed out to the screen and drew it back. No, there was no further change in the picture. He had received the news of Sybil Vane's death before he had known it himself. He was conscious in the events of life they had occurred. The vicious cruelty that marred the fine lines of his mouth had, no doubt, appeared at the very moment the girl had drunk the poison, whatever it was. Or was it indifferent to results? Did it merely take consonance of what passed within the soul? He wondered and hoped that someday he would see the change take place in his very eyes, shuddering as he hoped it. Poor Sybil. What a romance it had been. It had all been. She had often mimicked death on the stage, but then death itself had touched her and taken her with him. How she had played that dreadful last scene. Had she cursed him? Not as she died. No, she would have died of love for him. And love would have always been a sacrament to him now. She had atoned for everything by the sacrifice she had made in her life. She would not think of any more of what she had made him go through. On the horrible night in the theater, when he thought of her, he would be a wonderful tragic figure sent to the world stage and show the supreme reality of love. A wonderful tragic figure. Tears come to his eyes as he remembered at her childlike looks. A winsome, fanciful way, shy, tremulous grace. He brushed them away hastily and looked against at the picture. He felt as if the time had come for making his choice. Or has his choice already been made? Yes, life had decided for that for him. Life had its own infinite curiosity about life. Eternal youth, infinite passion, pleasures subtle and secret. Wild joys and wilder sins. He had made all these things. The portrait was to bear the burden of his shame, that was all. A feeling of pain crept over him as he thought of the desecration that was in store for the fair face of the canvas. Once in boyish mockery of Narcissus, he had kissed or feinted to kiss those painted lips that had now smiled at him so cruelly. Morning after morning, he had sat before the portrait, wondering at its beauty, almost enamored by it. It seemed to him at times, was it to alter now? That's where I heard enamored from. I knew I heard enamored at some point in the story, and that's where I heard it from. Okay. Enamored at it, as it seemed to him at times, was to alter now with every morning on which he yielded? Was it to become a monstrous and loathsome thing, to be hidden away in a locked room, to be shut out from the sunlight as it often touched a brighter gold of waving wonder as its hair? The pity of it. For a moment he thought of praying that the horrible sympathy that existed between him and the picture might cease. It had changed in answer to the prayer. Perhaps an answer to the prayer might remain unchanged. And yet, who that knew anything about life would surrender the chance to remain always young, however fantastic that change might be, or what fateful consequence it might be fraught? Besides, was it really under his control? Has it indeed been the prayer that has produced the substitution? Might there not have been some curious scientific reason for it all? As though he could exercise his influence upon a living organism? Might not, though, exercise an influence upon death and inorganic things? Now, without thought or conscious desire, might not things internal to ourselves vibrate in unison with our moods and passions? Atom calling to atom, the secret love or strange infinity. But the reason was not importance. He was never again tempted by a prayer of any terrible power. If the picture was to alter, it was to alter. That was all. Why inquire too closely into it? For there would be a real pleasure in watching it. He would be able to follow his mind into a secret place. This portrait would be to him the most magical of mirrors. It was to reveal to him his own body. It would be revealed to him his own soul. And when winter came upon it, there would still be standing where spring tramples on the verge of summer, where the blood crept from his face, and he left behind a pallid mask of chalk with laden eyes. He would keep the glamour of boyhood. Not one blossom of his loveliness would ever fade. Not one pulse of his life would ever weaken. Like the gods of the Greeks, he would be strong and fleet and joyous. What did it matter what happened to the colored image of the canvas? He would be safe. That was everything. He drew the screen back to its former place in front of the picture, smiling as he did so, and passed into his bedroom, where his valet was already waiting for him. and an hour later he was at the opera and Lord Henry leaning over his chair. Okay, we're all now on chapter 9. I'm gonna go, okay. I know you shouldn't really reheat coffee, but I still have a decent amount of coffee left and it is now freezing cold. So, since we're at the end of that chapter, I'm gonna go reheat my coffee. Ugh. Well, and I'll be back in about a minute. I'll be right back. And I'll have maybe there'll be your back screen up. And we are back. I'm nervous it's not gonna taste as good, but we're about to find out. Oh, my glasses are all fogged up now. I don't think it's as good, but it's better than cold coffee. Yes. Okay. Now it's, oh, sorry for bumping into you. It's crazy. This stream was a crazy stream. This is actually the largest amount of people I've been rated with. I have been rated, the one before this, I mean the second one would probably have been 25 people. So, Wishful, ups that by 5. It's very crazy. That's insane. I've been watching Wishful for 12 months now. It's crazy. Chapter 9. As he was sitting down at breakfast next morning, Basil Hallward was shown into the room. "I'm so glad I have found you, Dorian," he said gravely. "I called last night. They told me you were at the opera. Of course, I knew that was impossible, but I wish you had left word where you had really gone. I passed a dreadful evening, half afraid that one tragedy might be followed by another. I think you might have telegraphed for me when you heard it first. I read it quite by chance in the latest edition of the Globe, and I picked it up at the club. I came here at once and was miserable not finding you. I can't tell how you were heartbroken. I am about the whole thing. I know what you must suffer, but where were you? Did you not go and see the girl's mother? For a moment I thought of following you there. They gave the address in the papers, somewhere in the Euston Road, isn't it? But I was afraid of intruding upon a sorrow that I could not listen. Poor woman, what a state she must be in, and her only child, too. What did she say about it all?" "My dear Basil, how do you know?" murmured Dorian Gray, sipping some pale yellow wine from a delicate gold-beaded bubble aviation glass and looking dreadfully bored. "I was at the opera. You should have listened on there. I met Lady Gladwin, Harry's sister, for the first time. We were in her box. She is perfectly charming, and Patty sang divinely. Don't talk about a horrid subject. If one doesn't talk about things, then it would never happen. It simply is an expression, as Harry said. That gives variety to things. I may mention that she was not the woman's child. That was not the woman's only child. There's a son, a charming fellow. I believe he is not on that stage. He's a sailor or something. And now tell me about yourself. What were you painting? You went to the opera? Harry said Hallward, speaking very slowly with a strained look of pain in his voice. He went to the opera while Sybil Vane was lying dead in some sordid lodging. You talk to me of other women being charming and of Patty singing divinely before the girl he loved was in the quiet of a grave to sleep in? Why, man, there are horrors in store for the little white body of hers. Stop, Basil, I won't hear it, cried Dorian, leaping to his feet. You must not tell me about these things. What is done is done. What is past is past. You call yesterday the past? What has the actual lapse of time got to do with it? It's only shallow people who require years to get rid of an emotion. A man who is the master of himself can end a sorrow so easily as he can invent pleasure. I don't want to be the mercy of my emotions. I want to use them, to enjoy them, to dominate them. Dorian, that is horrible. Something has changed you completely. You look exactly the same wonderful boy who, day after day, used to come to my studio and sit for this picture, but you were simple, natural, and affectionate then. You were the most unspoiled creature in the world. And now I don't know what has come over you. You talk as if you have no heart, no pity in you, and it's all Harry's influence. I see that. The lad flushed up and going to the window, looking out for a few moments in the garden, flickering sun-lashed garden. I owe a great deal to Harry, he has said at last, more than I owe it to you. You only taught to me in vain. Well, I am punished for that, Dorian, or shall be some day. I don't know what you mean, Basil, he exclaimed, turning around. I don't know what you mean. What you want? What do you want? I want the Dorian I used to paint, said the artist sadly. Basil, said the lad, going over to him and putting his hand on his shoulder. You have come too late. Yesterday when I heard that Sybil Vane had killed herself. Killed herself? God heavens, there's no doubt about that? Well, my rat wants out, so I think I will show you her, just for 1 second. Hey, do you want to come here? You come here? Come on. You can jump, you're good. Come on. Thank you. Come on. I have you. She just put both her paws in my hand and then just went back. Okay, will you be safe with both hands? There you go. There you go. Baby. Wanna say hi? Do you want to sit on my shoulder while I read? Or do you want to just crawl around? I think you just want to sit right there. Okay. Okay. If you are crawling around, okay, you can sit there. That's fine. I just want to make sure I know where she is so she doesn't wander off. Okay. My dear Basil, surely you don't think that was a vulgar accident. Of course she killed herself. The elder man buried his face in his hands. How fearful, he muttered, and a shudder ran through him. No, said Dorian Gray, there is nothing fearful about it. It is one of the greatest romantic tragedies of this age. As a rule, people who acts lead to most commonplace lives. There are good husbands or faithful and faithful wives. Or something tedious, you know that what I mean. Middle-class virtue is all that kind of thing. How different Sybil was. She lived in the finest tragedy. She was always a heroine. The last night she played, the night you saw her, she acted badly because she had known the reality of love. She knew its unreality. She died as Juliet might have died. She passed again into the sphere of art. There was something in the martyr about her. Her death had the pathetic usefulness of martyrdom. It was wasted beauty. As I was saying, you must not think I have suffered. If you had come on yesterday on a particular moment, about 5:30, perhaps or 5:45, you would have found me in tears. Even Harry, who was here, had brought me the news, in fact had no idea what I was going through. I suffered immensely. It has passed away. Then it passed away. I cannot repeat any emotion. No one can, except sentimentalists. And you are awfully unjust, Basil. You come down here to console me, that is charming of you. You find me consoled and you are furious. Why are you climbing on my book? Do you want to say hi again? Oh, you're okay. There, is that better? Do you want to go back in your cage? You can't climb my desk right now. Okay, I'm gonna put you back. Okay. Bye-bye. You remind me of a story Harry told me of a certain philanthropist who spent 20 years of his life in trying to get some grievance redressed. For some address law altered. I forgot exactly what it was. Finally he succeeded and nothing could exceed his disappointment. He has absolutely nothing to do with an almost dead of ennui. It became a confirmed misanthrope, and besides, my dear old Basil, if you really want to console me, teach me rather to forget what has happened, or to see it from a proper artistic point of view. Was it not Gontier who used to write about La Constellation des Arts? I remember picking up a little volume-covered book in your studio one day, chancing on the delightful phrase, "Well, I am not like that young man you told me of when you were down in Marlowe together, the young man who used to say the yellow satin could console one of the miseries of life. I love beautiful things that one can touch and handle. Old brocades, green bronzes, lacquer work, carved ivories, and exquisite surroundings. Luxury, pomp. There's much more to be got from these. But the artistic temperament that they created, or at any rate, it is far more to me. To become the spectator of one's own life, as Harry says. It is to escape the suffering of life. I know you are not surprised at my talking to you like this. You have not realized how much I have developed. It was new thoughts, new ideas. I am different. But you must not like me less. I am changed. But you must always be my friend. Of course, I am very fond of Harry. But I know you are better than he is. You are not stronger. But you are much more afraid of life. But you are better, and you are happy you used to be happy together. Don't leave me, Basil, and don't quarrel with me. I am what I am. There is nothing more to be said. The painter felt strangely moved. The lad was indefinitely dear to him, and his personality would have great turning point in his art. He could not bear the idea of reproaching him any more. After all his indifference was properly merely a mood that would pass away. Sorry, Angel is now drinking her water now, so that's what that noise is. After all his indifference had properly merely a mood that would pass away. There was much more that was good, so much more him that was noble. Well, Dorian, he said at length with a sad smile, I won't speak of you again. About this terrible, horrible thing that has happened after today. I only trust your name won't be mentioned in connections with it. The inquest is to take place this afternoon. Have they summoned you? Dorian shook his head. A look of annoyance passed over his face and mentioned the word inquest. There is something so crude and vulgar about everything of the kind. I don't know my name, he answered. But surely she did. Only my Christian name. And that's I'm quite sure she never mentioned to to any other. She told me once that they were all rather curious to learn who I was, when she invariably told them all my name was Prince Charming. It was pretty of her. You must do the drawing of Sybil, Basil. I would like to have something more of her than a memory and a few kisses and some broken, pathetic words. I will try to do something. Dorian, if it would please you, but you must come and sit to me yourself again. I can't get on without you. I can never sit for you again, Basil. It is impossible, he exclaimed, starting back. The painter stared at him. My dear boy, what nonsense! He cried. What do you mean that you don't like what I did for you? Where is it? What have you pulled the screen in front of it? Why have you pulled the screen in front of it? Let me look at it. It's the best thing I've ever done. Do take the screen away, Dorian. It is simply disgraceful of your servant hiding my work. And that I thought the room looked different as I came in. My servant has nothing to do with it, Basil. You don't imagine I let him arrange our room for me? He settles my flowers for me sometimes, that is all. No, I did it myself. The light was too strong for the portrait. Too strong? Surely not, my dear fellow. It is a marble place for it. Let me see it. And Hallward walked towards the corner of the room. A cry of terror broke from Dorian's lips as he rushed between the painter and the screen. Basil, he said, looked very pale. You must not look at it. I do not wish you to. Not look at my own work? You are not serious. Why shouldn't I look at it? Exclaimed Hallward, laughing. If you try to look at it, Basil, on my word of honor, I will never speak to you again as long as I live. I am quite serious. I don't offer any explanation. You are not to ask for any, but remember, if you touch the screen, everything was over between us. Hallward was thunderstruck. At thought of Dorian Gray in absolute amazement. He was never seen him like this before. The lad was actually pallid with rage. His hands were clenched, and the pupils of his eyes were like discs of blue fire. He was trembling all over. Dorian, don't speak. What is the matter? Of course I won't look at it if you don't want me to, he said rather coldly, turning on his heels and going towards the window. But really, it seems rather absurd that I shouldn't see my own work, especially when I'm going to exhibit it in Paris in the autumn. I shall probably have to give it another coat of varnish before that. So I must see it someday, and why not today? To exhibit it? You want to exhibit it? Exclaimed Dorian Gray. A strange sense of terror crept over his face. Was that word going to be was the world going to see his secrets? Were people going to gape at the mysteries of his life? That was impossible. Something he did not know what had to be done at once. No, I don't suppose you will object to that. Georges Perret is going to collect all the best works for a special exhibit to the Rue de la Caisse, which will open the first week of October. The portrait will be away a month. The portrait will only be away a month. I shall think you should easily spare it for that time. In fact, I am sure you will be out of town. If you keep it away behind a screen, you can't care for it that much about it. Dorian Gray passed his hand over his forehead. There was the beads of perspiration there. He felt that it was on the brink of a horrible danger. You told me a month ago that you would never exhibit it, he cried. Why have you changed your mind? You people who go in for being consistent have just so many moods as others have. The only difference that your moods are rather meaningless. You cannot have forgotten that you assure me most solemnly that nothing in the world would induce you to send it to the I don't know why I can't say that. I can't say words right now. You told Harry exactly the same thing. He stopped suddenly, and a gleam of light came into his eyes. He remembered that Lord Henry had said to him once, half seriously and half in jest, "If you want to have a strange quarter of an hour, get Basil to tell you why he won't exhibit your picture." Tell me why he wouldn't. And it was a revelation to me. Yes, perhaps Basil too had his secrets. He would ask him and try, "Basil," he said, coming over quite close and looking at him straight in the face. We have each to tell a secret. Let me know yours, and I shall tell you mine. What is your reason for refusing to exhibit my picture?" The painter shouldered in spite to himself. "Dorian, if I told you, you might like me less than you do, and you would certainly laugh at me. I could not bear your doing either of those two things. If you wish me never to look at your picture again, I am content, and I have always you to look at. If you wish your best work I have ever done to be hidden from the world, I am satisfied. Your friendship is dearer to me than any fame or reputation. No, Basil, you must tell me," insisted Dorian Gray. "I think I have the right to know." His feeling of terror has passed away, and curiosity has taken its place. He was determined to find out Basil Hallward's mystery. "Let us sit down, Dorian," said the painter, looking troubled. "Let us sit down, and just answer me one question. Have you noticed that in the picture being something curious, something that probably at first did not strike you, but it revealed itself suddenly?" "Basil," cried the lad, clutching his arms in the chair with trembling hands and gazing at him with wild startled eyes. I see you did. Don't speak. Wait until you hear what I have to say. Dorian, from the moment I met you, your personality had most extraordinary influence over me. I was dominated soul, brain, and power by you. You became to me the visible incarnation of the unseen ideal whose memory haunts us artists like an exquisite dream. I worshipped you. I grew jealous of every one of whom you spoke. I want to have you all to myself, and only happy when I was with you. When you were away from me, and still you were present in my art. You were still present in my art. Of course, I never let you know anything about this. It would have been impossible. You would not have understood it. I hardly understand it myself. I only knew I had seen perfection face to face, and the world had become wonderful in my eyes, too wonderful, perhaps. For in such madness, in such mad worship, there is perils, the perils of losing them, no less than the perils of keeping them. Weeks and weeks go on, and I grew more and more absorbed and new. And then came a new development. I had drawn you in Paris, in dainty armor, and as a Dionysus huntsman cloak and polished boar spear, crowned with heavy lotus blossoms that had set on the prow of Adrian's barge. Glazing across the green turbid Nile, you had leaned over the still pool of some Greek wonderland and seen in the water silent slivers and marvel in your own face, and all been what art should be, unconscious, ideal, and remote. One day, a fatal day, I sometimes think, I determined to paint a wonderful portrait of you, as you actually are, not in the costume of dead ages, but your own dress in your own time. Whether it was the realism of the method, or the mere wonder of your own personality, thus directly presented me without mist or veil, I cannot tell. But I know that as I worked at it, every flaking film of color seemed to me to reveal my secret. I grew afraid that others would know my adultery. I felt, Dorian, that I had told too much and I had put too much of myself into it, and that I resolved never to allow the picture to be exhibited. You were a little annoyed, but then you did not realize that all that it meant to me. Harry, to whom I talked about it, laughed at me, but I did not mind that. When the picture was finished, I sat alone with it. I felt that I was right. Oh, after a few days, the thing left my studio, and as soon as I had gotten rid of the intolerable fascination of its presence, it seemed to me that I had been foolish in his imagination, that had seen anything in it. More than you were extremely good looking, I could paint. Even now I cannot help feeling that it was a mistake to think that a passion of one feels in creation is ever really shown in a work that one creates. Art is always more abstract than we fancy. Forms and color tell us of form and color tell us of form and color. That is all. It often seems to me that art conceals the artist far more than it ever reveals him. And so, when I got this offer from Paris, I determined to make your portrait the principal thing in my exhibition. It never occurred to me that you would refuse. I see now that you were right. The picture cannot be shown. You must not be angry with me, Dorian, for what I have told you. As I said to Harry, once you are made to be worshipped. Dorian Gray drew a long breath. The color came back from his cheeks, and a smile played on his lips. The peril was over, and was safe for a time. Yet he could not help feel infinite pity for the painter who had just made the strange confession to him, and wondered if he himself would ever be so dominated by the personality of a friend. Lord Henry had charm of being very dangerous, but that was all. He was too clever and too cynical to be really fond of. I need a water break. That's all he was. He was too clever and too cynical to be really fond of. Would there ever be someone who would fill him with a strange it's not adultery, it's adultery? It's idolatry. It's a very different word. Idolatry. Was that one of the things in life had in store? It is extraordinary to me, Dorian, said Hallward, that you should have seen this in the portrait. Did you really see it? I saw something in it, he answered, something that seemed to me very curious. We don't mind me looking at the thing now? Dorian shook his head. You must not ask me that, Basil. I shall not possibly let you stand in front of that picture. You will some day, surely. Never. Oh, perhaps you are right. And now goodbye, Dorian. You have been the one person in my life who has really influenced my art. Whatever I've done that is good, I owe you that. You don't know what it has cost me to tell you that what I have told you. My dear Basil, said Dorian, what you have told me simply is that you have felt that you admired me too much, and that is not even a compliment. It was not intended as a compliment, it was in confession. Now that you have made it, something seemed to have gone out of me. Perhaps one should never put one's worship into words. That was a very disappointing confession. What did you expect, Dorian? What did you see else in the picture? What, you didn't see anything else in the picture, did you? There was nothing else to see? No, there was nothing else to see. What do you ask? Why do you ask? Why, you mustn't talk about worship. It is foolish. You and I are friends, Basil, and we will always remain so. You have got Henry, said the painter sadly. Oh, Henry, cried the lad, with a ripple of laughter. Harry. Okay, I keep confusing. Okay, so Harry and Henry are the same person. And it's confusing when they were saying, oh, Harry, and there's Henry, because it's Lord Henry, but then his name is Henry. Oh, you got Harry, said the painter sadly. Oh, Harry, cried the lad, with a ripple of laughter. Harry spends his days saying that it's incredible, and his evenings in doing that is improbable. Just the sort of life that I would like to lead. And I still don't think I would go to Harry if I were in trouble. I would sooner go to you, Basil. So will you sit with me again? Impossible. You spoil my life as an artist by refusing, Dorian. No man comes across two ideal things. Few come across one. I can't explain it to you, Basil. I must never sit for you again. There is something fatal about a portrait. It has a life of its own. I will come and have tea with you. And that'll be just as pleasant for you, I'm afraid, murmured Hallward regretfully. And now goodbye. I'm sorry you won't let me look in the picture once again, and that cannot be helped. I quite understand how you feel about it. As he left the room, Dorian Gray smiled to himself. Poor Basil, how little he knew was the true reason, and how strange it was that instead of being forced to reveal his own secret, he had succeeded almost by chance in wresting a secret from his friend. How much the strange confession explained to him the painter absurd fits of jealousy, his wild devotion, his extravagant panic-trees, his curious resistances. He understood them all now, and he felt sorry that they had seemed to him to be something tragic in friendship so colored by romance. He sighed and touched the bell. A portrait must be hidden away at all costs. He could not run such a risk of discovering it again. It had been mad of him to have allowed the thing to remain, even for an hour in the room of which any of his friends had access. Okay. That is the end of chapter 9. This was a very crazy, crazy stream. I hope everyone who is still here enjoyed it. And we are going to raid out, just as Wishful did with me. I know that she's not here anymore, but I want to say thank you again. She went to go get groceries, but we are going to raid now. Let's see. We can raid Stutterstruck. We're gonna do that. Okay, well, everyone has an amazing, amazing day, and be kind and be nice. Unfortunately, I do not have a read message, but yeah. Okay, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Bye.